Hey guys, how are all of you doing? Hope fine, and yes, this is the next part of Game of Shadow in Naruto world. Where I am in the Naruto world. I have a name that isn't mine and I have a really nerfed version of the gamer. Is that all? Am I forgetting something? Right, inventory. At that I received yet another disappointment. Let's start without any delay. How did you do it? I groaned out loud as a scowl appeared in Naruto's and Chaoji's faces. The rest of our little group didn't give outward reactions to one Kiba Inuzuka's question. I had hoped that me beating him without trouble would put the fear of Kami in him. Apparently, I was wrong. What the hell do you want, Kiba? I said while mentally activating Bloodlust. I didn't actually want to beat the shit out of him, too much. But I hoped the skill would keep him away. I was severely disappointed as he gulped and stood his ground. I want to know how you did it. As I raised an annoyed eyebrow, he took a deep breath in and clarified. How did you become so strong? Suddenly, I was reminded of my little chat with Sasuke from some time ago. Go ahead, guys. I'll catch up to you later. I said, not moving my eyes from the annoying boy. You sure, IG? Chaoji asked somewhat protectively and I suppressed a smile. Yeah, we are out in the open. What can he do? I asked with a smirk as I watched Kiba squirm under my stare, either because of bloodlust, the situation or anything else, I didn't know. True. Let's go, guys. Shikamaru called and they went ahead. Damn, I wanted to go too. I took a deep breath as I deactivated Bloodlust. It had been a week since the attack and we were already facing a little problem. We had no idea how to actually find Kobyu. Oh, we could guess he was in the Inuzuka compound. No mystery there. But we couldn't actually go around the compound and search for the guy or ask around. That would be a dead giveaway for whoever investigated once we got our revenge. So, right now we could only go around trying to get some kind of clue or, preferably, figuratively or literally bumping with the guy. We didn't have any kind of information to work with, after all. Turning my attention back to the less annoying Inuzuka I had to deal with, I considered what to do. Advising Sasuke was one thing. For one, the Uchiha was an ass, but at least he didn't go out of his way to antagonize my friends and I like Kiba did. And for another, he had some heavy reasons for his attitude and I knew about them. Everyone did. If the boy in front of me had any reason to be the way he was, I didn't know them. And so, my answer came easily enough. Why should I help you, dog breath? My voice coming out with as much annoyance as I was feeling. I was pleased to see his eyebrow twitch. I am sorry. Okay. He said, squirming even more under my surprised gaze. For all the things I've said to you and the others. The apology couldn't be more forced, but I was just surprised that he had even said the words. And you expect me to spill everything just with that lame-ass apology? His eyebrow twitched again and his expression turned to an angry one. No. It doesn't work that way, dog breath. You've insulted my friends and me for the whole year so far. It'll take more than that. I want you to apologize to all of us, in front of the class and... I activated Bloodlust once more for emphasis. You'll do so on your knees to Naruto. He has put up with your crap for too long. This definitely didn't have anything to do with the blonde calling me brother. Nothing at all. Are you out of your mind? He growled and I simply smirked. You wanted something and I just stated a price. If you don't want the answers, Just go on your merry way and stay the hell away from us. Or else I'll have to not only kick your ass but also do so embarrassingly," I said, and then went after my friends. The conversation was done as far as I was aware. I heard Kiba start grumbling a conversation with Akamaru as I walked away. Why did you answer my questions but not his? My head all but snapped to see Sasuke leaning against a wall next to me with his eternal brooding scowl in place. Because you haven't insulted my friends. At least, not unprovoked. I thought to myself as I remembered the several fights that I had to stop when Naruto got annoyed at all the attention the Uchiha got. And you have a good reason for your attitude. He doesn't, not that I'm aware of, at least. He seemed to mull over those words for a moment before shaking his head. Probably keeping thoughts about the massacre out of his head. Doesn't matter, he muttered before straightening up. You said that my diet could influence my strength. What do I have to eat to get stronger? He asked bluntly, and I tilted my head. That definitely wasn't what I expected him to ask when he approached me. If he ever did, that is. I don't know as much as Chaoji does. His clan is the one that deals with food more. I've been following his advice so far. I wouldn't know if you need something different from what I eat. I explained first. But I can give you a list of what I eat and when. I don't think it can be bad for you to follow my diet. His frown deepened for a moment before nodding. I would appreciate it, he said, almost as if he was being careful not to butcher foreign words. I couldn't help but smile in amusement at that thought. I'll bring something in return, he said, and then simply left. That last part left me standing there for a moment. What could he be thinking of repaying me with? With a sigh, I started walking again. Oh. Turns out that being somewhat friendly with Sasuke Uchiha has its benefits. Why, you may be asking yourself. Well, that can be answered easily enough. The very next day after our chat after school, I gave him a sheet with the diet I followed, and he gave me a freaking Fuuma shuriken. Yes. One of the foldable big-ass shuriken that he and Naruto used against Zabuza. Just having it in my hand made me feel badass as hell. Naruto wholeheartedly agreed. Best trade ever. Some may think I'm exaggerating, but no. We wouldn't get to use Fuuma shuriken until we became genin after all. Granted, it was probable that taking the Bukijutsu elective would give us access beforehand, but still. We couldn't even buy them, and neither of our friends' parents would give us some to practice, not without supervision. Shikamaru's and Chaoji's mothers pulled me apart when they found out and threatened me with bodily harm if I ever lent the thing to their sons before the next year, at the very least. That was scary, I will admit. But I couldn't care less as I saw my new Shuriken Jutsu screen. Shuriken Jutsu. Shuriken throwing LVL 12. Increased accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 100%. Increased accuracy against a moving target with a shuriken by 20%. Fuuma shuriken throwing LVL 3. Increased accuracy against a stationary target with a Fuuma shuriken by 20%. Kunai throwing LVL 12. Increased accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 100%. Increased accuracy against a moving target with a kunai by 20%. Senbon throwing LVL 7. Increased accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 70%. I'll be honest though. It leveled slowly. Which made sense. I couldn't quite apply my mastery over the other weapons like I had done with the senbon at the start. The bigger shuriken was used too differently for that to apply. I also quickly learned the reason behind all the fuss over the thing. One slip or wrong throwing and I could easily cut something off or worse. While normal shuriken and kunai were little things the size of our fingers, the Fuuma shuriken had blades the size of our forearms, for Kami's sake. I was really careful once I finally got around starting training, and had to keep the thing in my inventory. No way I was leaving that thing in Naruto's reach. No way in hell. Another reason for my slow progress was that I spent almost all my time training stealth. Stealth, active, LVL 17. Hides your presence according to the level of the skill and the awareness level of others. Consumption 6 energy points per second. And I must say that it looked pretty nice. I was catching up with Shino's apparent level. Eyes up ahead. Shikamaru's whisper broke me from my thoughts as my eyes turned sharply towards the front. There he was, I thought as I heard one of the people around him calling his name. Kobyu Inuzuka. He looked a little like old Kiba from the Boruto series but with black hair and the Shippuden outfit. Next to him stood what was apparently his ninken. A husky, not that I thought that's what they called it in this world. For a second, I focused my gaze on the dog. There was something wrong with it but I couldn't for the life of me tell what it was. There seemed to be a difference with the other ninken that stood with the party, besides breed that is. I shook my head and focused on saving everything I could see for future reference. We finally find you. I thought, exasperated. I was starting to think the clue was actually a ruse. Time to see if Danza had given me the right information. I didn't have any delusions about who had given it to me after all. Anyone else would have acted or not said anything. So, we follow the plan. I asked Shikamaru, he was our strategist. I wouldn't dream of taking his place. He gave my question a somewhat reluctant nod. Think you can do it, Shino? He asked instead, both of us turning our eyes to the Aburam. It was fortunate that Naruto and Choji were away with the Akimichi trying to convince the blonde to go to one of his clan's restaurants instead of Ishiraku. I believe so. The reserved boy answered, pushing his glasses up. Good luck. Shikamaru and I said as he moved away and we took the other two inside the restaurant. The plan was simple enough, I thought as we sat at a table. Shino would follow the guy to his house and from there we would gather information as discreetly as possibly until we could prove he was guilty. Then came our revenge. I smirked as we ordered. It was just question of time anyway. Oh. It was late that night. I was jumping through roofs as I had been doing for the last 2 weeks. It was training for both stealth and free running and I had upped the effort that day. Shino had come back that night with the address of the Inuzuka and Shikamaru was probably happily planning with the extra information. Keeping in mind the Nara's suggestion, I stayed as far away from the Inuzuka compound as I could. He already had some clever ideas in mind and I was putting them to use. But I still couldn't keep the smile off my face. We were one step closer to getting payback. A shadow flew from the side and tackled me right in the gut. I fell in an alley, gasping desperately for air as I looked around for whoever attacked me. A second later I felt a cold edge on my neck and I looked down to see a hand holding a kunai. Now. What do we have here? A voice whispered next to my ear. I think you are smart enough not to shout, Sato-kun. Who the hell? You thought you could just up and follow a Chuunin like that? An Inuzuka at that? My blood froze as I realized. Kobyu. His dog walked up to us from in front of me. its white patches of fur doing nothing to conceal its presence even if the black parts blended perfectly in the shadows. And even without the white, those blue eyes seemed to shine in the darkness as they stared at me and its partner. I kind of understand it. The guy kept talking and I kept listening, keenly aware of the steel against my throat. I attacked your friend. He spat the last word so much venom that I almost flinched. That thing shouldn't have remained inside this village. So many deaths, so many families destroyed just like mine. I even lost my partner that night. And what do? They left it roaming here, around our people. I would leave it as it is, brat. He told me. I almost pity the obnoxious blonde. Almost. I was just venting a little anger, you see. I can't do anything about it, after all. Cammy, I can't stand the sight of it. He muttered bitterly. But alas, it'll live. So, leave me alone and nobody has to suffer. Let's go. The last part was said to the dog, who nodded weakly and both disappeared. My back straightened, finally free of the edged threat, as I took a deep breath in. My mind worked as fast as it could, processing his words. He knew Naruto wasn't the Kyuubi. He knew, but he didn't care anyway. The thought of what the blonde contained alone had driven the broken man to the edge and he took it out as best he could. If Danza was the only one that knew it was him, then he probably left it to me because nobody had been actually hurt. A test of sorts. I already knew that part, I even had an idea as to why nothing had been done. My theory was that Danza was keeping an eye on Naruto with Root. As such, he probably was the only one that knew what had happened. And considering everything, doing something probably wasn't a good decision for him if he wanted his group to stay under the radar. Not to mention that the War Orc probably didn't care enough. It probably wasn't something to make a big deal of in his books. Flashes of Naruto came to my mind. How he had been after the attack. How affected he had been. You're the best, Igini. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if this was a test from Danza. It didn't matter if Kobu had reasons. He had hurt my friend. That was everything I cared about. If anything, it was made worse because the Inuzuka knew that he wasn't the Kyuubi. Nothing was his fault. But he had to deal with it anyway. I cracked my neck and started training again. I would need a damn high level of stealth to get our revenge. But it would happen. He would suffer. I would make sure of it. Oh. He came for me. I said the next day as I sat beside Shikamaru and Shino. Both of them tensed up at my words. He saw me following. Shino asked and I nodded. I Apollo. Don't worry. I waved of his apology. We should have known better. We are doing a lot better against the teachers, but they still aren't active Chuanin. I reassured, keeping my voice calm. What happened? Shikamaru asked with his eyes narrowed. He said to leave him alone. I relayed. And he also confirmed that it was him. I informed and both of my friends seemed to go over the information. We are not leaving him alone, are we? Shikamaru continued and I turned to him and stared. Right. We'll have to be more careful. Indeed. I said simply. Iruka-sensei kept going on about the exams that would take place in 2 weeks. For now, we train. He won't be going anywhere. We can play the long game. Both of them nodded, turning to the front. Oh, and Shika. He turned towards me with a frown that disappeared as soon as he saw me. We are making it much more painful for him. Just to let you know. He nodded once more and turned. Bloodlust has gone up a level. Oh. Inopovi. I shuddered as I looked at Iji's spar with Chaoji. I had thought his mood would improve with time, but apparently, I was wrong. Ever since that night 3 weeks ago, the satyr had been downright cruel in his spars. Kiba, being the stupid mutt he was, had gotten the worst of it after insulting Naruto. Nobody had insulted Naruto since that day. Not out loud at least. He didn't even spare his friends apparently. Although he was much more good-intentioned about it. More than once I had heard him giving them advice after a spar. None of them seemed to take offense either, which was baffling if someone asked me. I had even asked Shika why they kept hanging with him. Why he put up with him. It didn't make sense in my head. Ig was pushing them to do better and Shikamaru should have to try his best to get away from someone like that. At least that's what I thought. We train because we want to. He had said in response. We asked him not to go easy on us. I could only stare at him with a gobsmacked expression. But you never want to train. I had pointed out shocked and he simply shrugged with that exasperating bored expression of his. He convinced me. And he left it at that as if that should explain everything. Nothing about Ig Sata made sense, I thought as he took out Chaoji and they left the circle. The red-eyed boy whispering things to the Akimichi, probably advice or something of the sort. I could only shake my head at that. Things had been so much easier before the boy appeared. I shook my head as the cold red eyes from that night flashed through my mind. Not too long after that, I had made my way back home and started helping my mother with the shop. I was drawing things in a notebook as I waited for time to just pass at the counter. I would never understand how my mother could enjoy doing this every day. The disbelief increased as I heard her hum contentedly to herself going through the plants on the greenhouse behind the shop. I was broken from my thoughts as I heard the bells and instantly my mouth opened to welcome whoever had walked in. However, my teeth clicked shut seeing who it was. Red Eyes found me and he smiled. What would have usually a warm smile before now wasn't nearly as reassuring as it would have been. I had seen what laid behind that expression. Hello, Ino. He greeted with a wave of his hand. Good afternoon, Ig, welcome to our shop. I said, my voice coming out almost warm mostly because of all the times I had greeted customers. What can I do for you? I asked. I'm actually here to speak to your parents. Are they here? He asked looking around before we once more my mother hummed a tone at the back. That's my mother. I'll call her for you. I made conscious effort not to run to the back. The boy just made me feel uneasy, and I really didn't like that feeling. At least he was acting somewhat normal, if he looked like he did that night. I shuddered at the thought. What can I do for you, Iji-kun? My mother asked with a big smile once we both made our way to the counter. I really didn't like how everyone acted so familiar with him. Although, I couldn't for the life of me think why. Well, it's more a question of what I can do for you, Yamanaka-sama. He still acted respectful. That was something. I've told you to call me Noriko, Iji-kun. My eyebrow twitched. It was a good thing my mother wasn't looking at me. She really didn't like when I antagonized Ig. Even though it didn't make sense for us to act close. That would be disrespectful, Yamanaka-sama. He said with a wry smile. Maybe he also thought it was weird. It would be nice to have someone understand the craziness of his existence, even if it was himself. So, what were you here for? My mother asked. Well, I was here to ask for a job, he said, scratching the back of his head. A habit that he probably picked up from Naruto if I had to guess. Fortunately, that seemed to be about the only thing he did get from the obnoxious boy. Oh. I would have thought you would ask the Akimichi first, my mother voiced, and I couldn't help but be curious myself. Chaoji had spent more than one conversation talking about how great Iji's cooking was. And he was much closer to them than to us, as mother said. That was one of my first options, together with other restaurants, he replied with a polite smile. But I thought I would try and pick up some new skills before graduation. I narrowed my eyes, trying to detect a lie, as my father had taught me. He wasn't lying, at least from what I could see, and as a Yamanaka I could see a lot. My mother hummed, tapping her chin with a finger in thought. I'm guessing you don't know much. He shook his head, keeping his smile. That could be a problem. There are some plants here that could be easily damaged, or, on the contrary, some of them are dangerous to handle. Meanwhile, I didn't know if I should be happy or angry. On one hand, if he started working at the shop, I would have more free time. On the other, if he did, he would be around a lot more. I understand that, he conceded easily. I'm willing to spend some time working without pay as I learn what I need to. For as long as you think it's necessary. Working without pay? I wouldn't do that in a million years. Well, I wouldn't if my parents didn't force me to, that is. I'll have to talk about it with my husband. But I think we can agree to that. We can take care of the shop well enough by ourselves, but sometimes Ino is too busy to help here. I looked away at the disappointed in her voice as she said the last part. What? I had better things to do than sit at the counter all day or tend to the plants. I quite liked gardening, but everything had limits. Just say the word and I'll start right away. Any time is fine as long as it isn't during academy hours, that is, he said with an excited grin. No one should be that happy to work, I thought, resisting the urge to groan. Also, thanks for your time. Have a nice day, Yamanaka-sama, Ino. Have a nice day yourself, Iji-kun. My mother waved happily as the boy left. See you, I said unenthusiastically. Well, it'll be nice to have more help around the shop. My mother turned to me and I really didn't like the glint in her eyes. I forced a smile on my face as I spoke. Yes, it'll be nice to have a bit more free time. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say as the glint intensified. Yeah, about that, sweetie. I gulped. This couldn't be good. Once your father gives the okay, you will be in charge of teaching him what he needs to know. I groaned and mentally cursed the existence of Iji-sata once more. A few days later, Ino gave me the message that her parents accepted me as a part-time worker at their shop. Moreover, they were nice enough to let me start after the mid-year exams at the academy. Not that I needed them to do so, I was pretty sure I could ace the tests without actual preparation besides the theory tests. It was still nice though. Are you ready, guys? Chaoji asked with a smile. It was plain to see that he was nervous though. I returned the gesture confidently. All ready, let's ace this. Well, except for Naruto, I said jokingly. Oi! The blonde protested, annoyed, and I chuckled. He really had put effort on the theory part though. Granted, I had tutored him through the whole thing during the months we had been friends, so he had an easier time than he would have had in canon. Or, this universe's version of canon. I was kind of surprised I didn't get a teaching skill or something of the sort though. Do you have to be so loud all the time? Shikamaru poked his ear with a scowl. Naruto wouldn't be himself otherwise. Shino pushed his glasses up. They both were trying very hard not to stare at Naruto as he started a conversation with Chaoji, and we walked calmly behind them towards the class. It was good to see the blonde Jinchuriki being his usual self. Ready for the Taijutsu test? Shikamaru asked, turned towards me, and I grinned at him. Yeah, nobody is going to be able to tell me that my win was cheap or luck, I said resolutely. Iruka-sensei had told us 1 week earlier that the Taijutsu test would be against the one closest to our rank. As first place, I would fight against Sasuke, and if I was honest with myself, I was looking forward to it. I had improved a lot since our spa, he probably had too, and I really wanted to see how I stood against him now. I believe you have a good chance. Why? Because I've seen your improvement, Shino commented. I wonder if I'll be able to take the 3rd place. Against Kiba. You better, otherwise we'll have to gang up on you until you improve. I joked, but he nodded seriously, making me sweat drop. He sometimes missed our. And I suppose we'll have to do accordingly if you lose. He countered, and my jaw almost dropped before I snorted. Shino was a sneaky bastard when he wanted to be, and also when he didn't. Right, of course. We both ignored the mutters about training maniacs from beside us with practiced ease. Even if we were joking, Shikamaru really didn't like the mention of training outside of when we were actually training. Do your best, Shika. We heard Yoshino from the entrance. The young Nara groaned in annoyance while I just smirked at him. Parents coming to the academy to see their children tests going on seemed to be a tradition of sorts. Especially for those that came from clans. If you complain, I'm gonna kick your ass, I warned without letting anything show on my face. Shikamaru's mouth clicked shut at my words before nodding in understanding. Right, sorry. It's not me the one you have to worry about, I reminded him. I didn't have a family. I had made peace with that before I even died in my last life. Naruto, on the other hand. Sometimes it's difficult to remember, Shino said in a strange bout of empathy. He was just full of surprises today. We shall try harder to do so. Oh man, my head hurts, Naruto complained as we went outside after the theory part of the exam and all of us rolled our eyes. Seriously, I chided. It's not that difficult. Not really, he accepted with a nod before grimacing. But it's boring. I just pinched the bridge of my nose. Just give up, IG. It's a lost battle. I could only nod grimly at Shikamaru's words. We were distracted by the sound of several enthusiastic mothers cheering for their children as we would start the physical part of the test. My eyes, though, focused intently on Naruto. Try not to eat too much of my dust, will you, Naruto? I said with a smirk as his expression started turning sad. He quickly turned to me with a frown. I'll beat you today, for sure, believe it. He grumbled to himself. Stupid jutsu that you won't teach us. It's not a jutsu. It's a skill, I added mentally for the 100th time. It never got old. The others just ignored us as usual. They weren't as bothered by this as Naruto was. I knew the reason though, and it always made me frown. I forced myself to keep a normal expression though. Naruto was worried. Both of us knew why the others didn't care. They knew they would have their own advantages once we started the next year, what with their clan training and jutsus. Naruto though, wouldn't have that. I didn't either, but I had the system and the blonde could see part of it in running and some other things. It had been frustrating. Because as we prepared for the mid-year exams, I had tried to discreetly invite him to a party. It would have kept his mood up by being able to track his progress if nothing else. It would have been a great way to show that I cared and trusted him. It hadn't worked. The game didn't have a party system. I added that to the long list of disappointments. From then on, every time Naruto felt left behind hurt. And every time he called me Igini, I felt guilty. Sadly, we would have to wait until he found out about his advantages as an Uzumaki and Jinchuriki. Even if he didn't know why he had what he had. Start. Iruka-sensei called out, waking me from my thoughts. I sprinted almost without thinking while mentally activating running. I quickly found my way to the front. The lap running test went just as it did on a usual day. I finished first, with Sasuke and Naruto following not so far behind in that order. Then a complaining Kibara and, a little later, everyone else. Shino took the 5th place, which finished the number of scores that would get special mentions afterwards. Kibara and Naruto were much more vocal about everything than they usually were due to this. I walked towards the latter once we were done. You are almost there, Naruto. Just look at him. I pointed a thumb towards Sasuke, who was leaning on his knees while trying to catch his breath. My blonde friend, on the other hand, looked barely winded. Being an Uzumaki did that. Or maybe it was the Kyuubi. Maybe both. The thing was, now with a proper diet to develop his body, the training we did and his nigh infinite stamina, Naruto would catch up to the Uchiha sooner or later unless something crazy happened. Being a prodigy wouldn't help the Avenger, not with this. I know, I'll surpass him and then you, Ig. He replied with a big grin. I was surprised when I first noticed that he had enough tact not to call me Igini in public. He still did call me that when we were with our friends though. That had earned some curious looks from them, but they all just shrugged it off. You'll certainly try. I waved him off, getting pout in return. A moment later, when everyone had recovered, we followed Iruka-sensei towards the Shuriken Jutsu range for our accuracy test. Well, time for you to show off even more. Shikamaru grumbled next to me and I smirked. What could I say? There was next to no chance of me failing this test. I could only get extra points with the Senbon part after all, which was the only one I wouldn't get perfect score. I wasn't a teacher, but from what I knew of my fellow classmates I could guess the top 5 of this one. I was pleased to see that I had been mostly right. I was first place, then Sasuke, then came, to everyone's surprise, Shikamaru, followed by Ino and Shino. The latter of which took the top place of everyone that wasn't taking Senbon training. If you don't take the first place in the whole exam, I'll call bullshit. Naruto chuckled as we moved towards the Taijutsu circle. I just shook my head amused. He wasn't wrong though. I was pretty sure that I would be top 3 at the very least in the theory part. Shikamaru would definitely get first place there, and there was a high chance of Sakura outdoing myself there too. I would be the first to admit that I didn't put too much effort on the books. Which Naruto usually pointed out when he wanted to slack off. It not being my highest priority and it being left out were different things though. Still, I should do decently enough in that test, and with first place in running and Shuriken Jutsu, my first place was pretty much guaranteed unless Sasuke absolutely trashed me in Taijutsu. Which I was sure wouldn't happen. Even if I didn't win, he shouldn't be that far ahead anymore. And I was being serious about not being sure about my victory. I had saved some energy points during the running test, but I had still had to use quite a bit to secure my first place. That meant that I wouldn't be able to use intermediate Taijutsu for more than a few seconds. IG Sata. Title: Academy Student. Energy points: 148/400. Chakra points: 190/190. Strength: 19. Dexterity: 19. Constitution: 20. Chakra: 19. Chakra control: E. Intermediate Taijutsu, active, LVL4. Increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. Active effect increases the user's physical stats by 2. Active effect consumption 50 energy points per second. 2 seconds, 3 at most if I get lucky. I'm used to myself. Still, it shouldn't come to that. 2 seconds should be enough if I was cornered. The rest I would save for running or maybe bloodlust. IG Sata vs Sajuka Chiha. Iruka called out and I took a deep breath in before sharing a look with my opponent. After doing the pleasantries of the pre-battle, we faced one another. Wipe the floor with him, Sajuka-kun. Saruka's infamous banshee scream rang over the other fangirls' voices. I was surprised to find out that Ino had become much less vocal about her infatuation. It hadn't lessened though. You can do it, Iji-kun. I felt a chill run down my spine as a girl shouted that. I have fangirls too. I thought with trepidation. I grimaced at that. Oh, Kami. I muttered to myself. Tell me about it. Sajuk grumbled, apparently, he had heard me. This time we shared a look with a completely different meaning. No wonder he was so irritable. I would be too if I had to deal with this every day. It was especially disturbing considering that I was actually twice their age. Making friends with these children was one thing, they were pretty mature for their age. But thinking about that was a different thing altogether, I thought with a shudder. Let's get this over with, I said, and he nodded resolutely. At Sensei's start, we both rushed at each other. The spar was nothing like our first one. Fists flew around, kicks cut the air, bodies turned to dodge or parry. It was the most even match I had ever had, I realized. It was challenging and difficult. I never got a clear shot at him and neither did he get one at me. And I loved it. Defeating him had been great and all. But I had won with cheap tactics. Not that it mattered. A win was still a win. However, winning by a technicality and actually facing off the most prominent prodigy on the whole academy since Itakai Uchiha was something else. It filled my chest with a feeling of accomplishment. But it wasn't enough. And so, I pushed. I pushed myself as hard as I could. I couldn't waste energy on skills, not just because. But I didn't need it. I could fight this by myself. Victory would be mine. My own hellish training would pay off, right there and then, that, I vowed. Not because I wanted Sajuk to acknowledge me, or because I wanted to prove myself to my friends. No. I would win for myself. I hadn't worked myself to the ground since I arrived to this world just to up and lose. I didn't need a bloodline limit. I didn't need a fancy heritage. I just needed to survive. Survive and keep improving. But merely surviving wasn't enough anymore. Shinobi no Kami. I thought as a grin spread on my face even with the spar still going on. Dream big, wasn't it? Why survive when I can live? I had asked myself more than once. And therein laid the question. No, I wouldn't survive. I would live this second chance I had been given and live it to the best of my abilities. I had made friends. I had found a brother. That was why I wouldn't settle for acceptable or decent. No, I wanted to be the best damned ninja the elemental nations had ever seen. Fuck Madara and fuck Kaguya. More importantly, fuck Kanon. With a face-splitting grin on my face, my fist connected right in the middle of Sasuke's gut. He staggered back and coughed. This was it. My win. I kicked the side of his leg and he grimaced, his body twisting to his right. I rotated, sending a second kick to the side of his head. He ended up on the ground. Silence fell on us and I stopped. He weakly pushed his face off the dirt. We were all kids, at least in body. I had learned that after a while. A few direct hits and most of us would be down. We couldn't just tank those kinds of hits. Blocking and the like for sure. But never just taking the hits and shrugging them off. With my gaze firmly locked on my opponent, I waited. Why? Simple. I wanted him to get up. Probably for the same reason he hadn't just knocked me out all that time ago. I gave him a chance, out of respect. Because we stood at the top of the class. We were rivals. The only ones that could challenge the other. And it felt great. I had never quite understood rivalries in anime and the like. It always seemed a bit stupid. Granted, some were touching and all that shit. But sometimes they were just stupid. At least back then. Because, sometimes they formed between mortal enemies and the like and you would get this kind of touching moment between people that should hate the other's guts. How did that make any kind of sense? But, now I knew. A rival was much more than I ever realized before that moment. A rival was an equal. And in a world of strength, speed and power, an equal was important. I understood then, as I saw the last loyal Uchiha stand weakly on his feet. I smirked at him and he smirked at me. I took my stance once more and his face turned serious once more. He dashed towards me, for all of a couple of steps before jumping. I wanted to laugh at that. I recognized it. I stepped aside and he opened his legs. He was really copying my move. Free running. I thought as I jumped with all my strength. He twisted his body midair to kick me but I kicked him first. He rolled on the ground before simply stopping. With a thud, I fell back to the ground. Winner, IG Sata. I started chuckling instantly after Sensei's announcement. Wails broke out from Sasuke's fangirls while a few other girls cheered. I tried my best to ignore the latters. Soon, I was being shaken by an enthusiastic blonde. You kicked his ass. Naruto shouted while holding my arms and moving me back and forth. And it was so awesome. He added even louder than normal. I simply returned his grin wholeheartedly. Congratulations. Chaoji added with a thumbs up. You fought really well. Shino commented. Even if it was an even battle for the most part. Congratulations. He nodded at me and I returned the gesture. Thank God. Shikamaru sighed. I was worried you would have us up the training or something. He commented with a grimace at the very idea. I slapped him on the back. I knew you cared, Shika. Now, crush me so that it doesn't go to my head, will you? I asked before chuckling as he instantly made his move on the board. The top 5 of the Taijutsu spars ended up being me in the first place, Sasuke second, Shino, much to our joy, in third, then Kiba and lastly, Chaoji. On the girls' side, Ino took first, then Hinata, then Sakura, and the last two I didn't even care. It wasn't because they weren't named characters or anything of the sort. It was because they were just so far beneath the level of the named characters that it wasn't even worth the effort, honestly. Naruto had been a bit bummed that he had only appeared in the top of the running test, but we were able to keep him from being too affected. He had placed pretty well in all of them, after all. I noticed though, that he seemed to be much less affected than I anticipated. It still surprised me sometimes, the apparent effect I had had in the world already. We didn't have to wait much longer after the spas for the teachers to announce the results of the theory test. Shikamaru took first place, no surprise there for me, then Sakura, also not a surprise, then it was me, which was a bit surprising, then Shino, and closing the top was Ino. Curiously, I looked a bit further down. Sasuke, Hinata, Choji, Naruto and Kiba. Naruto was just glad he had beaten the Mutta and, being honest, so was I. Finally, they announced the overall top 5. I had given up trying to guess them, considering that I barely remembered those out of the top 5s and that girls were mixed up in almost all of them but were divided for the general top. I just couldn't accurately guess it. 5th place in the male side, Naruto Uzumaki. All of us turned to a gaping blonde. You did it, you hyperactive knucklehead. I brought him on a one-armed hug and shook him while the others congratulated. I'm at the top. But I only entered the top for running. He muttered, still staring at where they wrote his name on a board. 4th place, Shikamaru Nara. Woo! Well done, Shika. We all heard Yoshino shouting from where the parents were watching. Sednara smacked his forehead with his palm and let out a long, suffering groan. Congratulations! Choji said, bringing his best friend in a hug much like I had done Naruto. 3rd place, Shino Aburam. We are just filling the list up, aren't we? I said with a grin. Even Shino looked amused, from what little was visible of his face, that is. We didn't hear his parents shouting, although that wasn't surprise. Was that a buzz? Was that a bit of pink in Shino's cheeks? Interesting. 2nd place, Sasuke Uchiha. The fangirls went wild. Well, that was expected. I said with a shrug as everyone turned to me with a raised eyebrow. You didn't see that coming? I commented with a raised eyebrow. 1st place, Ig Sata. I simply grinned as the screens popped. Quest complete, finish the mid-year exams in 1st place. Reward. +1 to all stats. +1 to all skills. Plus title, Aspiring Prodigy. Aspiring Prodigy improves the rate at which your stats and skills increase by 10%. If this isn't nice, I don't know what is. I thought with a grin as I equipped the title. 5% more was 5% more. Well, I said casually, even thought my expression betrayed how excited I was. What are the plans for today? I asked while Iruka gave a little speech before sending everyone home. We'll celebrate at my place, Choji said with a grin. He seemed genuinely happy with our achievements. That was how Choji was though, the others were always first in his mind. Your mother will have to let me help. She was kind of hoping you would say that. The Nara and the Yamanaka are coming too, and she really wanted to cook a lot. So, she said she would appreciate the help. He explained and I nodded with a smile. I didn't mind, I kind of enjoyed cooking anyway. Sure. It's the least I could do. Naruto will wash the dishes. Oi. Everybody snickered. So, I leave you alone for half a year, just like you wanted. We all fell silent at that voice. Even the other students and families that stood near it. And this is what you accomplish. Turning my head, I saw two women looking with extreme disappointment at a younger boy. A big, black dog stood right next to the older woman while three slightly smaller grey dogs stood behind the younger one. The mother had wild spiky brown hair and an almost animalistic look. The daughter had the same hair color tied in a ponytail with two locks framing her face. Zoom and Hannah in Yuzuka, I realized. But Mom, Kiba started. You said you didn't need my training. That you could place well by yourself. I cringed internally from her tone. That was the voice that all boys and girls feared the most. A disappointed mother's voice. I don't need to train so hard. They are all weaklings. Wasn't it? I was surprised Kiba hadn't run for the hills already at that point. This explains things a little. I thought to myself. This explained his frustration at our progress a bit more. If he wasn't getting training from his family, it must have hurt to see us improve so much too while being orphans. Basically, in the same situation as he was at the moment. Still doesn't excuse anything though. I shrugged mentally. Besides those thoughts, I decided to ignore them. The rest of our group was looking at the scene play out. Naruto was on the verge of laughing before I elbowed him. Even if he tried to hide it, I was sure they would hear it with their enhanced senses. My focus though, quickly fled to their dogs and compared them to Kobyu's. I couldn't shake the feeling that his Ninken, there was something wrong with it. But for the life of me, I couldn't point out what. It was frustrating. Curious, aren't you, kiddo? The voice snapped me from my thoughts and I turned to see an amused Zoom. Sorry for staring, in Yuzuka-sama. I bowed to both, the Ninken and her. When I looked back up she had a half smile and a raised eyebrow on her face. Don't worry about it. She waved it off amused. Why so curious though? I'm sure you've seen Ninken before. She asked with a tilt of her head that reminded me entirely too much of a confused puppy. It felt like seeing the action on a fully grown tiger or something of the sort. You are right, I've seen plenty, actually. I started slowly, my mind racing. And then, an idea formed in my mind. I had to make conscious effort not to smirk outwardly. And I saw this one the other day, it acted strange. I commented with a confused frown. Maybe I was being stupid. Or maybe I was just a real genius. How so? Piped up Hannah from the side, all the Ninken staring at me. Even my friends. Shikamaru's eyes told me to go along with it. That was all the reassurance I needed. Well, it wouldn't look up, even when spoken to. And his tail and ears were also down. It almost looked like it was trying to just curl up into a ball. I said as casually as I could with a small smile at the end. It helped that I wasn't lying at all. Although, maybe it was just shy. I don't know dogs that well. I shrugged. I was being honest there too. I was just commenting on it because it was true and because why not? The shared look they interchanged told me that there was much more than I had originally assumed. Can you describe the dog? And its partner too, if you can. Zoom asked, and if I had been the kid I was supposed to be, maybe I would have missed the steel that slipped in her voice. However, I wasn't and I didn't. I tried to cover myself, simply describing the dog to the best of my abilities but leaving Kobyu's as vague as I could. I was trying to sell the story that the dog was the one that caught my attention, not the other way around, after all. It helped that I was good with half-truths. I didn't have any delusions of being able to outright lie to a jounin. How rude of me, she said once I finished. Zoom in Yuzuka, as you probably know. You do know Kiba and this is my daughter, Hana, she said pointing at their children. My partner, Kiromaru and my daughter's partners, hi, Ma and Lu. Lu is a girl, in case you were wondering. You are familiar with Akamaru, I'm sure. I paid close attention as she introduced everyone, and noticed that she made the distinction between the Heimaru brothers. I narrowed my eyes trying to see a difference between them. They looked exactly the same, although you don't have to try and recognize which is which, Hana said with a reassuring smile, and I saw that the others were also looking between the three dogs confused, even Shikamaru. I looked at the dogs again. I think I can differentiate them. The three dogs' heads snapped towards me. I didn't quite know why I said it. It was unnecessary. But I was kind of on a rush after the day's events and accomplishments. Maybe I still had a bit of child mentality in me. Or maybe I was just getting used to being around important people. Oh. Hana raised a skeptic eyebrow. Even in Yuzuka have difficulties with that. They even smell almost identically. There's no way it is that easy for you. Kiba dismissed my statement instantly, getting a look from his family. Care for a test? I asked with a grin to the dogs, and one barked. I'll close my eyes for a few seconds. And I did so. I heard the dogs walk around for a moment before one barked and I opened my eyes. Hi. I pointed at the one on the right. Ma. I pointed at the left one. And Lu. I pointed at the on in the middle. How? Kiba stammered. I still have trouble telling them apart. He added in disbelief. Hi looks like a dog version of Shino. I explained with a smirk to my Aburam friend. Ma looks like he has the same energy levels as Naruto. And Lu, well, she is adorable. Lu gave me a happy bark in response and I grinned at her. Her brothers looked put out by the comment. Well, color me surprised. Zoom commented with both eyebrows slightly raised. First time someone notices that fast, I think. Hana added, this time looked like she was trying to analyze me with her eyes. Guys. We should probably get going. Chaoji said, looking uncomfortable about interrupting. Mum said she wanted to get home quick to start preparing the food, and the look she is giving me. He shuddered and we turned to see that indeed, the woman looked on the verge of coming and dragging us to their house. We better get going, then. I said. Pleasure to meet you, Inuzuka-sama, Inuzuka-san. I bowed to both women. And you guys too. My grin widened as I spoke to the dogs. I was a dog person, what can I say? See you in class, Kiba. I was proud of how casual my voice came at that last one. The pleasure was ours, and please, call me Zoom. The intimidating woman said with a wolfish smirk. And me Hana. Her daughter added happily. Anyone that can differentiate these brats can call me by my name. I gave a wry smile at that. Why was everyone so open around here? It was a goddamn ninja village, wasn't it? Sure. I replied awkwardly. Everyone else said their goodbyes and we went on towards the Akimichi compound. New perk acquired, leader. What? Oh. Hayashi Povi. IG Sata. I mused with narrowed eyes locked on the scoreboard. That's the boy that invited you to his group, isn't he? I asked, my gaze moving towards the dark-haired boy and his friends. The Aburam, Akimichi and Naraes and the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. The boy either was much smarter than his score in theory let on, or he had a terrifying amount of luck. He was, father. I had to make conscious effort in order not to sigh at my daughter's stutter. An heiress of a clan as powerful as the Hyuga shouldn't behave like that, and despite my efforts, the girl just wouldn't stop. Did he say why? I prodded, with my eyes still fixed on the red-eyed boy as he interacted with the Inuzuka head's family as if he was an old friend. Which was strange, as I was sure it was the first time they met, the male heir aside. Not really. Hinata answered quickly. He just said that he would like to spar, that his friends and him do that sometimes. And stealth practice, and shogi, I think. This time I did sigh as I heard her go from almost normal talking to whispering. I see. Did he mention anything else? He mentioned being interested in the gentle fist. My eyes narrowed instantly at the satyr's back as his group left. So, it's cunning and not luck, huh? I thought to myself. The boy wasn't even in his last year at the academy and he was already gathering allies, it seemed. That together with his talent. My eyes went back to my daughter. If only it was Hanabi. My second daughter would have had a much better chance at befriending the boy instead of Hinata, with her social problems. On the other hand, he did approach her. I reasoned. Maybe the boy saw something in my first daughter, or was it just because she was the one in his class? Either way, I did see potential in Hinata despite what many believed. The problem was that she didn't have the drive to be a proper successor to the Hyuga clan. My thoughts traveled back to the satyr and the several meetings that had been had at the council regarding his friendships. The Akimichi and the Nara had had nothing to say but praises for the boy after only a few weeks, and that had only grown with time. Especially once their heirs seemed to find in them the drive to better themselves. And that wasn't even mentioning the effect he had had on the Jinchuriki, the one to benefit from his presence the most. Maybe. You have my permission to join them. I decided and purposely ignored my daughter's break from the proper etiquette as she gaped like a fish. However, you will keep the gentle fist a secret as it should be. We'll see if he earns the chance to learn it. And with that, I started walking back to the compound. Maybe the Hyuga could benefit from this anomaly too. Kami knows anomalies have the tendency of leaving all too early. The week following the midterm exams was an interesting one, to say the least. First of all, was the weekend. Naruto and I spent it half at Shika's and half at Chaoji's, only going back home to sleep. Shino also informed us that his father gave us permission to visit if we wanted to. We would have gone there, but considering how Shino was and what little he had told us about his family, we decided against it for the weekend. We were all celebrating our results after all, no need to bother the quiet family with our celebrations. After Naruto got over his surprise, he had been happy to shout his 5th place to anyone that listened, and also those who didn't. Chaoji had been quite happy with his progress too, even if he hadn't made it to the general top 5. Even Shikamaru and Shino seemed happy, in their own way. The former by smiling instead of smirking from time to time, and Shino, the most difficult to tell, was much more proactive in his interactions. Even the parents were showing their excitement. Shikamaru's and Chaoji's mothers both pulled me aside to thank me for getting their sons to train more seriously. It had been an awkward conversation for me and I could only scratch the back of my head as I told them it was nothing. Moments like that made me feel like the child I was supposed to be. Even Shikaku and Kauza showed their appreciation, even if I was treated to a beating at shogi by the former while they were at it. Outside of our little group, I even got to see even more excitement from Ino at the gathering of the 3 clans that Saturday. Hilariously, she was as enthusiastic about her first place as my blonde brother-in-all but Blood was with his 5th. And it was funny too, that the one embarrassed by me pointing that out was the Yamanaka instead of the Uzumaki. It was after those 2 happy days that the first surprise came my way. I was simply sitting at our table with a cup of tea while Naruto slept early, for once. I had a smile on my face considering everything that would change from then on. I would start working with the Yamanaka, probably gaining one more skill at the very least. And Iruka-sensei would start my chakra training early. That was what I had been looking forward to ever since I woke up in this world. Even if I tried to avoid it to escape unnecessary attention. Attention that I had gotten either way, apparently. A knock on the door made me narrow my eyes. Our friends wouldn't come at this hour. And nobody else visited us. Danza, or whoever left the note with Kobu's name, wouldn't knock either. I considered simply leaving it and act as if I was asleep too, just to be on the safe side. In the end, I sighed, telling myself that I was being overly paranoid for no reason. What had someone to gain for attacking us? I had gained attention but no so much and certainly not negative, besides associating with Naruto. I did pause for a second as a certain Inuzuka's face flashed through my mind before shaking my head. Hokage-sama. I breathed out as my eyes widened. Good evening, Ija-kun. I do believe I've told you before to relax. The leader of the village said good-naturedly, and I gave a wry smile at that. I'll do my best, Sarutobi-sama. I replied nervously while inviting him inside. The elder man let out a chuckle with an amused expression in his face. If I may ask, why do you find it so difficult to just call me Hiruzen? He asked, as if it wasn't obvious. I'm just an academy student, I said while I guided him to the table. And a clanless orphan too. And you are the Hokage on top of being the head of an important clan. I think it's pretty obvious, Sarutobi-sama. Can I get you some tea or something else? I asked as he took a seat. Tea would be nice, thanks. I turned and checked that the water I had used for my tea was still hot and prepared another cup. Thank you. I would have thought that Naruto would have rubbed off on you to help with that problem. He added, referring to the blonde's ability to be informal with anyone and getting away with it. I gave a wry smile at that. I'm sorry to disappoint, but he hasn't. I deadpanned at him and he chuckled once more. Talking about him, where is the ball of energy? He asked, looking around. It was a wild weekend. Even he got tired of celebrating. I said with a fond smile as I took a sip of my tea. He nodded with a similar smile of his own. Well, on that note. Congratulations, Ija-kun. He said, raising his cup. It's quite the accomplishment for someone with so little resources to achieve first place in the whole exams, even if they weren't the ones of the end of the year. He praised, and I let a pleased smile appear on my face. I had good incentive. I shrugged, still grinning. Yes, your extra training. He nodded. It'll be approved tomorrow morning, by the way. Iruka will probably give you a scroll on the topic for you to read before starting with the practical side. He informed me, and I nodded, not the least disappointed. I had no rush, any advantage I could get would be good. I look forward to it. And after that followed a silence that I couldn't quite decide if it was comfortable or not before it was broken. It's good that I got to meet you alone. He started, and I looked at him curiously. I wanted to know if there have been any problems since the last time. I know now that Naruto would try to keep them a secret if there were. He said, his expression turning serious and mine followed suit. I took a second to consider the question before answering. Everything's been fine. Without us having to restock the kitchen, there's very little to be bought, so I can't accurately say how troublesome things would be on that front. I replied with a grimace. And the attention we receive on the streets is still the same. I should be able to tell you more in a month at most though. At his raised eyebrow I smiled. I'll go out to buy Naruto some clothes for his birthday. With some luck, it'll stop him from using that monstrosity. I'm sure he uses it because it was one of the few things he could get himself. A likely reason, as much as it pains me to admit it. He nodded grimly. There's little else to say. We aren't alone for the most part, usually hanging with our friends. So, there's little time for someone to be overly antagonistic. I believe that the incident was a one-time thing. I hope so, at least. We can only hope. He nodded once again while sighing. Once more, thank you for taking care of him. It's what family does. I gave him a small smirk before explaining as he raised an eyebrow. He calls me Igini from time to time. He chuckled before looking to the stairs with a fond smile. He does tend to come up with terms of endearment for those that acknowledge him. He agreed. I suppose that makes us family too, doesn't it? As he calls me Gigi, maybe you should call me that too. My only answer was a wan smile. I shall keep trying, I guess. I'm sorry. I said instantly before he waved it off. Don't worry. I understand that for some it's difficult to see past the titles. He smiled good-naturedly. It comes as a breath of fresh air, when someone treats people like me as if we were anyone else. Although, it may be a quirk of my own. He mused. Either way, it's quite late. I shall make time to visit you and Naruto some other day. And after that he stood up and we walked towards the door together. Good night, Ija-kun. He said and I took a deep breath in. Good night, Hiruzen. I forced out with a smile. It felt really awkward to call him that, but it was still better than trying to go for Gigi or something of the sort. He smiled at me and I felt some of my nervousness leave me. What a way to finish the weekend. I thought to myself as I closed the door behind me with a sigh. It would be some time before I got used to having the attention of the Hokage on me, that was for sure. Oh. Are you sure? I asked with a confused frown. Yes. Screamed my blonde teacher exasperatedly. I'm sure they are different plants. I've been working here for years for Kamisake. Can you stop asking questions like that? She let out a shuddering breath before throwing her hands up. I need a rest. This is too much. And she stormed off. Meanwhile, I chuckled to myself as I watched Ino leave the store. I have to wonder, why are you annoying her? The Yamanaka matriarch asked while peeking from behind a shelf, an amused expression on her face. She's explaining everything as if I'm a special kind of idiot. I answered awkwardly, scratching the back of my head. I hadn't meant to anger her that much, but it really annoyed me to be treated like an idiot. I wouldn't be that bothered if it was an adult. But to be treated so by a child. I had some pride. I'm no botanist, but there's no need to go that far. I tried to defend myself before sighing. I'm sorry. To my relief, she waved it off. Don't worry, I was going to call her on it before you started your little payback. She smirked at me. Besides, I could be teaching you that. But I also wanted to punish her some. She really should take her work more seriously than she does. Good to be of assistance, I think, I replied, and she giggled. Now, how about I explain while she calms down? She said, pointing at the shelves of plants. And at my nod, I continued my class. Ino's attitude aside, I had found that the plants of this world were really interesting. Or maybe plants were interesting in general, but I had never paid them enough attention to notice. They didn't sound as outlandish as everything else seemed to be, after all, even if there were some that seemed to be world exclusive. Like the trees that had a more chakra-receptive wood. Those were used to create chakra paper for fuinjutsu, as well as buildings that had seals used on them for several reasons. Or the flower that could disturb the chakra usage of a person if it was burned and the smoke was breathed. I had expected the Yamanaka store to have plants that could be used in poisons and medicines, even if that wasn't mentioned on the show or manga. It was, after all, a somewhat frequent trope of fanfictions. However, I hadn't expected for it to be a mixture of both. Turns out that the more combat-oriented part of the shop was a somewhat open secret. It seemed to be a kind of unspoken rule that only Shinobi could know about that. Probably due to the fact that only Shinobi had access to those plants. It was halfway through the woman's explanations and instructions that I got the skill that I had been expecting ever since I started working. New skill acquired, Gardening LVL1. Gardening LVL1 improves the user's ability to take care of plants according to skill level. Nice, I thought to myself, containing a smile. I could already see myself with a small garden for poisons and medicines in the future. It would be a nice addition to my arsenal, of that I had no doubt. It had been the whole reason for me taking that job over a restaurant or something like that. Well, almost the whole reason, I thought, suppressing a smirk. Oh, Ino. Can you continue teaching Ija-kun? I have to check some things at the back. The woman said with a pleasant smile that just told her daughter that it wasn't really a question. I would have been apologetic for bringing trouble to the girl. But honestly, I had put up with her attitude for far too long. I didn't even know what her problem was, really. Of course, mother. Ino said with an almost convincing smile. Almost. I rolled my eyes behind the Yamanaka matriarch. Are you going to teach me for real this time, or will I have to continue annoying you? I asked with a raised eyebrow as the woman left. If glares could kill, I would have been but a pile of ash on the floor. I hate you so much, she muttered through gritted teeth. I rolled my eyes again. Just think of it like this, I said, taking a deep breath in to help my patience. If you teach me everything I need to know quickly, you'll get me out of your hair faster. I could almost see the gears turning in her head as she blinked. Fine. That she still seemed reluctant made me deadpan at her. This is going to be a long day, I sighed to myself. Oh. It was an amused me that sat at the house on one of those rare days where everyone but me was busy. Naruto had gone out with Chaoji to visit some new akimichi restaurant. Shikamaru was helping his family with the deer that they took care of, and Shino was spending some time with his parents. So, there was I, amusing myself by reading the scroll Iruka-sensei had given me to get me started on my chakra training. And I said amusing because I had already done all that it mentioned months ago. It described how I should meditate to become aware of my chakra and get a feeling of it. Obviously, it also talked about some other things I wasn't aware of. But the main point, I already knew. I couldn't wait to see his face when I told him that I had already done that part. It was a good thing that meditating wouldn't look too suspicious. It was at that moment that I once more heard someone knocking at the door. Wow, I thought it would take more time for the Hokage to clear his schedule. I thought. After all, it wasn't often that the man got to visit, precisely because of how busy he was with his duties. It would be a shame to tell him that Naruto was, once more, not available. As I opened the door, I blinked in surprise. Hello, Inuzuka-san. I greeted awkwardly. Hello, Ija-kun. Hana replied cheerfully before looking at me with a mock stern expression. And I told you to call me Hana. Of course, come in. I added quickly, realizing that my surprise had gotten to me. Hello, hi, Lu. I said slowly, taking a moment to differentiate them. Even if it was noticeable, I just couldn't do so instantly. Do you want something to drink? I asked, confused about her visit. She shook her head before speaking. Well, I just thought you would like to know, we investigated about that Ninken you mentioned. She said, and my eyebrows rose. What I said guaranteed an investigation. Did something happen? I frowned and she petted one of the brothers with a sad smile. She was being abused. I made an effort to keep from showing too much anger. If I hadn't already hated the man before, I would hate him then. There was no excuse for abusing an animal. Much less for an Inuzuka to abuse their partner, I guessed. It was extra bad because it was a dog. I liked dogs, sue me. It's one of the worst things someone in our clan can do. She nodded, as if pleased by my reaction, what little I showed, that is. And we are currently prosecuting him. The glint in her eyes made me feel vindicated. Whatever the Inuzuka did to him, he deserved it, in my eyes at least. Our clan also wanted to thank you for informing it. We are even looking into her partner's friends. They couldn't have missed the signs, especially if you noticed. No offense. Don't worry. It's true. I waved her off. Is she going to be okay? I asked, keeping myself from asking questions about the man. She'll be, eventually. For now, she is staying with me. I work as a veterinary medic nin, by the way. And also, with other recovering and handicapped Ninken. She explained before smiling softly. You are welcome to visit. If anyone should be able to, it should be you. Her smile widened some. I didn't know how good an idea that was. She had ambushed me together with her partner, after all, I thought wryly. On the other hand, it wasn't really her fault. I'll go. I decided. Where is the place? I asked with a small grin. Also, is there something I can prepare to bring there? Food, I mean. To brighten the mood a bit, you know. I explained, trying not to sound too awkward and failing. I really liked cooking and, most of all, seeing people enjoy my food. Dogs would have the same effect, if not better, I guessed. All three dogs turned to me and I swear their eyes turned into stars. It was a bit scary, to be honest. Hana simply giggled, whether it was at her Ninken or at me, I didn't know. Do you have something for me to write on? I'll give you the address and an easy recipe. I would tell you that you don't need to bring anything but. She pointed at the scandalized looking dogs and giggled once more. I chuckled too, with a grin. As she wrote, petted the dogs with a relaxed smile. Maybe I would get a normal dog for myself when I was older. If I wasn't too busy doing missions, that is. Although. Are Ninken Inuzuka exclusive? I asked curiously. And she turned to me with raised eyebrows before an understanding expression took over. They aren't, not really. She answered, looking uncomfortable before continuing when I rose an eyebrow. It's rare. They are the ones to choose partners, after all. She signaled the dogs around me. And we in Yuzuka are much more compatible with them than normal people are. I nodded at her explanation. I wondered how had Kakashi gotten not one but a small pack of ninken for himself if that was the case. He didn't seem particularly similar to an Inuzuka. I see. You are a picky bunch, huh? I said teasingly while scratching Ma's belly as his rear leg kicked the air. I'll have to make sure that the food is up to your standards, I guess. At that I broke his impassive look with an approving bark. They will eat anything if it's edible. They are gluttons. Hana said, drawing annoyed barks from all three ninken and a chuckle from me. Let's go, we've bothered Ija-kun enough as it is. It's no bother. I like dogs. I reassured her while petting Lou. You can bring Lou, anytime. The others though. I have a side glance at the male dogs. They aren't as cute. I looked away while Ma growled. I smiled at them. Just joking, you can visit anytime, guys. All three barked happily at me. Really, I should have interacted with Inuzuka earlier. The smarter dogs were just the too cute. See you, Ija-kun. See you. Oh. Besides all that, I finally got my answer as to why I had gotten the new perk. Leader. The user's stats increase by 10% when fighting for or together with a subordinate or ally. Hinata had joined our group on that week's Wednesday. Although, she explained, her father had actually given her permission to join after the exams. We all guessed that it had taken her the other days to gather the courage to approach us about that. All but Naruto, that is. He was clueless like that. It was both amusing and slightly exasperating to watch them interact with each other. What with the way that Hinata's mind seemed to turn off when he came too close or spoke to her too much, and the way Naruto couldn't understand just why she acted like that. Back to the perk though, my best guess was that the game considered my little group subordinates or allies, as uncomfortable as thinking with those words made me feel. And my theory was that I had reached some kind of goal to unlock it when Hinata had decided to join, even if she hadn't officially done so. It was either that or something to do with the Inuzuka. But the latter made a lot less sense to me, so I went with my theory. I knew it would be troublesome. Shika muttered as he made his move before sighing. Give it time. I said with a grimace, pointedly avoiding looking at Naruto, who was attempting to get Hinata to spar with him. She'll get over it, eventually. Like you getting Naruto to stop wearing orange. The Naru countered with the smallest of smirks. I narrowed my eyes at him. It'll happen. I replied stubbornly. Like you winning a match against Shikamaru. I gave Shino a betrayed look. I'll admit, it'll take some time. I deflated at the stares they gave me. A long time. I corrected with a grumble. But it'll happen. Just you wait. Actually, I think you aren't that far from getting your first victory. Shikamaru said while moving another piece. Although, it won't be today. He smirked as I groaned. He had me in 5 moves maximum. I don't feel any closer than I was when we started. I grimaced, setting the pieces again. Shogi has gone up a level. I ignored the screen. Those had stopped cheering me up a long time ago. Fainted. Shino said, making us turn to the pair with surprised expressions. I had thought that the fainting was fanfic exaggeration. Wow, this'll take longer than I thought. I muttered and received 2 affirmative hums in response. Hinata's thing too. Oh, shut up, Shika. I threw one of the wooden pieces at my smirking friend. Oh. Hanapovi. What is he doing here? I couldn't help but roll my eyes at my brother's question and tone. He wanted to visit. We told you about what we found after what he told us, didn't we? I asked, mostly to make him remember our conversation from earlier that week. It still made her blood boil. An Inuzuka abusing his partner. Just as bad as a husband abusing his wife or a parent abusing their child in their eyes. The man, term I used loosely in this case, even had the gall to try to justify his actions. Blaming his partner, saying that she was lazy and that she rebelled against him too often. Lies, pure lies those had been. We had found the truth easily enough. He was bitter. Extremely bitter about losing his last partner during the Kyuubi attack together with several members of his family. That had quickly led to finding that he had been the one to attack the Uzumaki's apartment some time ago. He had been smart enough to erase anything that would point to him from the scene. He had been stupid enough to take a trophy from the kid's home though. Disgusting, that's what he was. Nothing else. He would never have a Ninkan partner ever again, for all intents and purposes, he wasn't an Inuzuka anymore. The clan would regard him with more hostility than they would an Iwanin. He was a pariah to the clan, forever disgraced. And that wasn't even mentioning the charges from the attack. Targeting the village's Jinshuriki wasn't a small matter. That's why no one had actually done anything despite their hatred until now. Nobody wanted to face that punishment. He wouldn't get any mercy though, nor would he get support from the clan, considering everything else. It was poetic that the one to bring all that to light was the Uzumaki's best friend. Several people had narrowed their eyes at that part, but there was just no way for the kid to know about his involvement in the attack on his friend's apartment. Right. Kiba grudgingly accepted her explanation. She ignored his mood in favor of looking as the dogs all but buried the poor red-eyed boy trying to get to his food. She loved her brother, but he had started to get the alpha syndrome as the Inuzuka called it. His case was especially bad as he was to be head of the clan. It would have been her and, for all intents and purposes, it should have been her. However, she had found her calling at the veterinary, looking after the injured Ninkan and those that simply couldn't go back to the field. And thus, the position of heir had been passed to her brother. To add fuel to the fire, he had held on to a pretty good position at the academy, only behind the last Uchiha and only competing with the Aburame for second place, on the male's side, at least. That had gone to his head and ended up with him dismissing their mother's training, believing that he could do well by himself at the start of the year. It was a good thing that he had received a slap of reality soon while he was still at the village and not later while outside on a mission. You gave him an Inuzuka recipe? Her little brother asked incredulously, almost making her roll her eyes again. They aren't clan secrets, you know. She replied dismissively. It's not like I told him how to make Ninkan soldier pills. But, still. He sputtered. Wow, the new voice broke them from their conversation as they turned to the guest, that was still surrounded by dogs. One was even perching himself on his shoulder. I thought I had made quite a bit. Ig commented with a wry expression. These rascals never have enough. I reassured him. You could have brought 2 or 3 times as much and it wouldn't make a difference. Several Ninkan barked in protest. It would have made a difference. They would have enjoyed themselves more. She rolled her eyes at them. I'll try to bring more next time. He told the dogs apologetically. receiving several tongues to the face as a response. I giggled at the sight. It was always nice to see them being cheerful. Not many came to visit, I thought, suppressing a sad smile. You are going to make my job more difficult, I said sternly, not meaning a word of it. It's difficult enough to keep them in line as it is, you know. Sorry. He apologized, scratching the back of his neck. Wait, next time. Kiba interrupted, scandalized. Yeah, I can visit again, can't I? He asked. A few of the dogs jumped on top of him affectionately while some others growled at Kiba. Yeah, the boy wasn't doing himself any favors. I shook my head. He had been really bitter, especially with the satyr, as he was the one that crashed his delusion the most. Of course, you can. As long as you don't cause any trouble, I can let you see them, I reassured with a smile. Having someone to cheer the Ninken up a bit would be a boon. Not to mention the food. They were really bottomless pits, the whole lot of them. You hear that, guys? He said cheerfully while petting the Ninken that was the reason for his visit in the first place. Their meeting had been a bit rocky at the start. She had been even more nervous than normal around him, but after a few whispered words from the boy she had been more open than she was with anyone else. It had baffled me, really. I can't believe this. Kiba grumbled before making his way out. I sighed as the door closed before turning and giggling as the cubs tried to drag Ig away from the older dogs to play. All the while, the poor boy tried to calm them down and failed miserably. It seemed that things would be much livelier from now on. Oh! Ig's povey. The last surprise of the week came as I arrived home from my visit to Yuki, Kobyu's ex-Ninken. It had been a nice day, if a tiring one. I should have known that a bunch of ninja dogs would be tireless, especially considering that several of them couldn't leave the place after being rendered unable to go to the field. It was a really sad realization, that one. I would make sure to visit as much as possible. Even if it would kill my wallet to try and cook enough for them. I had a job now and didn't need to worry about my food anyway. I paused and blinked at the stack of papers on the table. Naruto. What did I tell you about leaving your homework around? I exclaimed, annoyed. There was no response. Put all this away so we can eat, will you? I'm making ramen. I blinked again as he didn't immediately come down running. I had already used that to get his attention several times and never seemed to lose effect even if I didn't cook ramen in the end. There was only one explanation. Naruto wasn't home yet. Warily, I walked to the papers and looked at them. The words on the topmost sheet made me take a deep breath in. Good job. Picking them up nervously, I started reading. The first pages talked about what I had done, analyzing, criticizing and even grading all our plans for revenge. From our first decisions to how we started biding our time, improving, and preparing. Shikamaru's decision of having me continue my mapping hobby away from the Inuzuka clan so that I had an alibi, even if a weak one, and my decision of starting my job at the Yamanaka to know some poison seemed to get the best comments. However, the thing that was praised the most was how everything had been resolved. Improvising and, most importantly, making someone else deal with Kobyu. I felt so very weird reading the report. After that came information on Kobyu. Everything that had been found out, the prosecution and results. Even what had happened to his friends was there. I felt a satisfied grin form on my face as I read his punishment. And then I arrived to the last sheet and my eyebrows rose. There was a reward, apparently, for a job well done. I couldn't even begin to know what to think about that. But it was there. It told me about a shop, where I could go and buy whatever and however much I wanted free of charge, up to a maximum, of course. Well, Danza, I thought to myself. Setting the papers down and seeing how they crumbled to dust instantly. I don't know what you are playing at. But, for now. Thank you. Now, close your eyes. Iruka-sensei said calmly, and I did as told. Concentrate on the feeling of your chakra as we talked before. I let my mind wander freely until it got a grasp on the warm and tingly feeling of my chakra. A small smile formed on my face as the hairs on my arms stood and a shiver of excitement traveled through my body. Now, try to affect it. Remember, a little at a time. And so, my actual chakra training started. My whole attention moved towards the flowing of the energy inside me and how I could affect it without going overboard. I expanded the river of life force on random spots by mere millimeters at first. And then I started working from there. If I wasn't careful with the chakra still inside of me, then I could blow myself up, and if I wasn't careful with the chakra outside of me, then I would waste it all. That's why being capable of sensing chakra was a requirement for teachers at the academy. They needed to be able to tell if a student was about to mess up in order to stop them. Now, focus on this and get a hold of it with the chakra. Iruka said softly, and I felt something press against my forehead. A leaf, most probably. But that wasn't important. The important part was getting the energy to move and stick it to my skin. Because, contrary to what one would expect, chakra couldn't be commanded or forced. It could only be controlled, and the term was used loosely. I all but had to ask my chakra to do as I wanted. For the last week, as I tried to get a feel of it and affect it a little, I had quickly compared it to trying to get your blood to move at will. It sounded impossible, and it was at the start. But slowly, mind prevailed over matter in this case, and my life force started listening to me, if not subserviently. Slowly, my chakra grazed the leaf, not even enough to be called a touch. Carefully, I repeated that, each time a bit longer with more force, until I got a good feel of it, and then changed the approach. From touching to holding. It was a strange concept, to be honest. Like trying to imitate Spider-Man and stick to a wall, but with the actual possibility of it and with my forehead. Good job. Sensei praised, and my concentration slipped together with the leaf. Again. He prompted calmly, and I went at it again, my smile turning into a full-on grin. Working with my chakra felt awesome, no matter how simple it was. And so, I went at it for half an hour before I felt myself utterly exhausted. Opening my eyes when Iruka told me that we were done for the day, I smiled tiredly while looking at the screens in front of me. Basic Chakra Control Exercises LVL1. Increases the chakra control of the user according to level. Chakra points, 50/200. Thank you so much for your time, Sensei. I said while bowing. Don't mention it, IG. We had a deal, remember? He waved off good-naturedly, and I smiled at him. Now, go, I really want to get back home sometime today. He added with a smirk, and I snorted. Sorry about that, Sensei. I bowed again. See you tomorrow. And after receiving his goodbyes, I walked out of the classroom, tired but also feeling extremely proud of myself. I had reached a milestone. And what milestone was more important in the Narutoverse than starting using chakra? None, in my opinion. Fucking finally. I groaned. There goes my good mood. I thought with a grimace as I turned to Kiba once out of the academy. I was just about to tell him where he could go when I stopped and blinked. "Don't be annoying, mutt," grumbled Sajuk from where he stood, on the other side of the entrance, leaving me between him and Kiba. I looked at both of them for a minute before sighing. Good thing that Naruto would be out with Chaoji until late. "I'm too tired to deal with you, Kiba," I grumbled. "Hey, and what about the emo jerk?" he asked outraged, and I groaned again. "Just, shut up. Let's go somewhere else. I need a drink and possibly something to eat," I said tiredly as I dragged my feet through the streets. Sajuk calmly fell into step next to me while I heard Kiba grumble something under his breath before following, stomping his feet all the way. "Where are we going?" Sajuk asked, not sounding particularly interested. "I'm going back to home. If you have a problem with it you can just leave," I said bluntly, and the Uchiha simply shrugged as a response. "No, no way." Kiba shook his hands in denial. "I just wanted to say that." I stopped walking and stared as the Inuzuka fidgeted with his hands. "That I'm sorry." "All right. I'll apologize to Naruto later too," he added quickly when I went to speak, and I nodded. He sounded much more honest this time than he had been before. "Good, just stop being a dick and we are good," I replied. I had considered his situation and could kinda understand how someone like him became so increasingly frustrated with his situation. He was still a bit of an idiot for rejecting his mother's training and developing too big an ego, but that was about it. "Right, so, goodbye," he said awkwardly before turning and leaving, not waiting for me to say anything. I shook my head with a chuckle before starting my way back home, again. "I wanted to know if it would be alright for me to join your group's training," Sajuk admitted slowly as we walked through the village, and I tilted my head. Honestly, I had started to doubt he would ever want to join. But I guess I judged his character wrong. It wasn't much of a shock though. I had grown used to people in this world surprising me, as weird as that sounded. "Sure," I replied instantly, and he turned to me with slightly wide eyes. "Just, like that?" he asked before frowning in confusion. "Why would I have a problem with it?" I asked instead with an amused smile. "Because I don't get along with Naruto." He frowned even more, like he couldn't understand what I was saying. I had to make conscious effort not to laugh at it. Understatement of the century. I did snort though. It was kind of funny. But still, it's not the same as with Kiba. He openly insults him. "You are just too good," I explained, which seemed to confuse him even more. "He just doesn't like that you are very good in what we are training and also all the attention you get." "Okay," he replied slowly, still not completely understanding, I guessed. "Doesn't matter." I waved the topic off. "Point is, it won't be a problem. Just don't insult anyone that doesn't insult you first and we'll be all right." "I can do that," he accepted, although he looked pensive. "What are you working on?" "We decide it on the spot, really." I shrugged and he frowned. "We usually do some stealth training after classes by following a teacher on their way back. We also work in our shuriken jutsu and taijutsu at home. Shika and I play shogi every chance we get, and I go around the village free running from time to time too." "Why did you mention shogi?" he asked confused. "Strategic training, although we do it mostly for fun," I admitted with a grin. He, for his part, simply nodded seriously. "Then, I'll join your training, if it's not too much trouble." He added the last part like it was a particularly difficult thing to do. I simply smiled. He really wasn't used to normal interactions. Sure thing. Just come with us after classes, that's when we decide what we do. Right. See you tomorrow, then. He stopped walking but didn't go away, and I looked at him for a second before he spoke again. Thank you. He gave me a slight bow. Don't mention it. See you tomorrow. And we went our separate ways. Life could certainly be interesting. Oh. Good afternoon, everyone. I greeted as usual and received Noriko's reply instantly. Ino, for her part, did something out of the routine. She smiled warmly at me and retuned the gesture animatedly. I smiled wide and bright before speaking. I won't help you with Sajuk. I told her with my best happy voice. The girl instantly shut her mouth, effectively keeping what she had been about to say to herself, and frowned. Then she huffed and returned to doing nothing behind the counter. People in this world liked to surprise me, but some were still predictable. Thank Cammy for that. Oh. Good afternoon, everyone. I called out and was instantly tackled to the ground by the biggest dog in the veterinary, who was quickly followed by a bunch of puppies. The sound of giggles could be heard in the background. At least let me lay down the food, guys. I tried to push the dog off of me uselessly. A little help here. I asked pleadingly, only for the bags to be taken out of my hands. I was left to my fate, being licked all over the face by over-enthusiastic dogs and puppies. I definitely wasn't grinning from ear to ear. Hey there, Yuki. I greeted the black and white dog with a smile when I was finally allowed to sit up. She replied with an enthusiastic bark and I booped her. She shook her head before glaring at me. I brought extra food, I said, instantly making her return to her happy self. I grinned as she went with the others and started eating. I don't blame you. I remembered my words from our first meeting when I saw her so extremely nervous to meet me. You did as he told you to. It was his fault, not yours. That and many reassuring smiles and petting had finally gotten her to open to me. And I couldn't be happier about it. You didn't have to bring more food, you know. Hannah commented when I managed to stand up despite a few stubborn puppies lingering next to me. I just love seeing them so happy. I shrugged, looking over the group before bending down so I could pet the young dogs at my feet. In hindsight, maybe I should have stayed on the floor. Oh. 1 month later. You mean there's more presents than this? Naruto asked in awe as he looked over the different kinds of ramen I made for his birthday. I took the moment of distraction on his part to show the displeasure I felt on my face. Shikamaru and Shino joined with a scowl and an angry buzz respectively. Chaoji almost growled too. But this wasn't about our anger, this was about making Naruto's birthday great, for once. Yeah, but we'll eat first. I trailed off and blinked as I saw 5 bowls already empty. Closing my eyes and taking a deep breath in, I sent a suffering glance towards the others who gave me pitying looks. So much hard work, and it disappeared so fast. This is for Naruto, I told myself encouragingly. Damn it, I had spent half a day preparing all that. I felt a pat on my shoulder and I turned to Shika with a grimace. It's just once a year, IG. He said, nodding solemnly, and I nodded. Once a year, right? That did indeed make me feel better about it. Anyway, let's eat before he leaves us with nothing, again. I added in a grumble and he snorted. As I looked over Naruto's positively ecstatic expression, I felt much better about my afternoon cooking. The day had gone pretty calmly so far. We had celebrated a bit at Ishiraku's during lunchtime and we had decided after the academy that we would go straight home. I was really grateful to the Yamanekas for letting me off for the day. I had promised to help during a weekend in exchange even if they were alright with it either way. The others had offered their house but Naruto had decided that he wanted to celebrate in his one true home. Those words still brought a smile to my face a few hours later. The whole group had joined, except Sasuke. The Uchiha hadn't had any trouble interaction with anyone, even if Naruto and him still bickered a lot. However, the Uchiha only viewed our get-togethers as extra training, even after a month of them. Like the academy away from the academy. He never joined our shogi games or any other game for that matter though. He only wanted to throw himself at shuriken jutsu and taijutsu training, which was fine for everyone. Except for my brother, since he saw it as Sasuke thinking himself better than the rest of us. Anyway, eventually, and quite fast too, everyone was full. I took that as a personal victory. One can never know how stressful cooking is until you have to cook for an Akimichi and Naruto. The sheer quantity of food that they could make disappear was entirely unfair. So, seeing food on the table when they said they were done was a rare occurrence. You outdid yourself, IG. Chaoji complimented while Naruto simply gave me a thumbs up from where he laid almost on a food coma. I was sure my expression was just as smug as it had been when I beat Sasuke. Thank you for the food, Iji-kun. Hinata shyly nodded at me and I gave her a bright smile. She was much better than when we first met. She only seemed to get nervous when Naruto was involved some way now. Progress was progress, however small it was. At this rate, you could open a restaurant and earn more than as a ninja. It would certainly be less troublesome. Shikamaru pointed out lazily, laying his head on a hand. Yeah, but someone has to take care of you all, right? I smirked at him and he shook his head with a roll of his eyes. The help is appreciated, IG. Shino nodded seriously and it was my turn to roll my eyes. Anyway, maybe we can leave the presents for later, seeing as Naruto is out of it. I commented and the blonde instantly sat up. My lips twitched. Presents? The boy asked, looking like even talking was painful due to how much he had eaten. And chuckled silently as I turned around. We'll have to leave it for tomorrow, everyone. I said mock seriously. That's a pity. Shino nodded solemnly and stood up to pick his present. I'll bring it tomorrow then. I had to give it to him. He joked so rarely that when he did it was difficult to see through him. Not that it would have been difficult for Naruto to fall for it. No, no. Naruto burped while pulling himself together. I'm all right. I can open them right now. Are you sure? I asked in faux concern. There's no need to overexert yourself. Just go to sleep. I said reassuringly. Eiji-kun shouldn't tease Naruto-kun so much. Hinata pointed out, not looking at anyone in particular. In other circumstances, I would have teased her. But I really wanted to help her be more confident, so I stopped myself. You ruin my fun entirely too much, Hinata. I scowled for a second before smiling at her to let her know I was joking. Anyway, come over here you idiot. I wrapped an arm around Naruto who instantly started grinning. Who wants to go first? I guess I'll be first. Shino answered as he was already standing and holding his present. Shikamaru and I decided in a somewhat joint present so. Yeah, I know. said Naruto stood up grumbling as he picked up his present from a table I had set at the entrance. Here. He extended it towards the blonde. A book. Naruto tilted his head curiously and I couldn't help but do the same. A book wasn't something you normally thought to give the Uzumaki, to be honest. Trapping? He asked, not looking put out by the book, and I raised an eyebrow at Shikamaru. Most of those can be turned into pranks. I checked. He sent a small smirk our way and I grinned. That sounded much more like Naruto's thing. My brother seemed to agree wholeheartedly. Awesome. He turned towards the Aburam with excited eyes. And instantly teared through the paper that wrapped the present. Trapping tools and supplies. He explained instantly as Naruto opened the wooden box that contained everything. You are both great, guys. He wrapped an arm around each of them. Just for that, you are safe. Everyone else should look out, because I coughed into my hand as I let loose a little of my passive bloodlust. I had gotten the hang of not using energy easily enough, even if it was much less effective. He sweated for a bit before correcting himself. And IG too, of course. He nervously added, and I let out an innocent smile. My turn. Chaoji called out as he finally managed to stand from his chair. Putting a hand on his pocket, he pulled out a few pieces of paper and extended them to Naruto, who quickly read through it before his eyes widened. Yep, the Akimichi confirmed. A reservation for all of us in the place you wanted to try out, Naruto. Quickly reading over Naruto's shoulder, I noticed that it was indeed one of the many places that the blonde wanted to visit. There were several in that list, from the many food debates that he and Chaoji had had over the time we had met, but that one stood out due to the Akimichi saying that it had a pretty good ramen. Naruto really wanted to know how it compared to Ishiraku. It was a very expensive place though. Fortunately the reserve had the food included. I gave Chaoji an appreciative smile as Naruto thanked him profusely. Don't mention it, my dad asked for me and they quickly agreed. We didn't even have to pay, to be honest. He scratched his cheek embarrassedly. Still, this is awesome, Chaoji. My turn, I guess. Hinata fidgeted with the present in her hands while biting her lower lip. It looked really adorable, to be honest. Finally gathering her courage, she extended it towards Naruto, who promptly took it and, for once, carefully opened it. My eyes opened wide as I looked at the red scarf in Naruto's hand. As my gaze darted towards my brother, I noticed that he had the same reaction before he snapped his head towards the Hyuga. Thank you, Hinata. He said with a soft smile that was very rare in Naruto. It brought a grin to my own face just to see it. Don't he mention it? The girl touched the tip of her fingers together. It isn't much, but... No, it's great. The boy reassured with a much more normal wide grin that had the poor girl blushing up a storm with small but quite happy smile. In the end she simply hummed before going back to her chair, probably to calm herself. And last, but not least, I said dramatically as I waved towards the table. My gift was quite big, in a way. He looked in awe at the table before he started opening the bags on top of it. I had taken a trip towards the shop that I had been pointed towards for my reward and found out that it had a lot of things. From clothes, to equipment, to, well, pretty much everything that a ninja could need, even things that weren't quite for the job. There, I had spent as much as I could to buy clothes both for Naruto and myself. For him I concentrated mostly in black or blue pants and shirts that were mostly in shades of orange. I didn't have any hopes of getting him to stop wearing orange altogether, so I would take what I could. At least these clothes were a bit more fashionable than the jumper and pants he used. I had also bought something else though. And this too, I said, pulling a small package from my pocket and offering it to the boy, who was looking in awe at an assortment of orange shirts with different designs on the fronts or backs, especially one that had the Uzumaki swirl in black on the chest. He was surprisingly slow while taking the last present and opening it, but eventually he pulled out a silver chain with a simple pendant shaped like a yin-yang symbol but in red and blue instead of black and white. I thought it fitting, I commented, trying to rein down my nervousness. I had never been good at choosing presents, and it was difficult to tell just when I did it right since everyone accepted whatever I gave them with a smile that could easily be out of pity before I died. Because, you know. I pointed awkwardly at my eyes and his widened in understanding before he turned back to the necklace and grinned. It's great, brother. His voice was so moved that I couldn't help but give him my own version of his normal grin. I was really glad. Oh. Naruto POV. It's really great, you know. I commented, looking transfixed at the necklace IG had gifted me while sitting on the couch. My brother, with emphasis because it had never felt so real as in that moment, was organizing everything after everyone went back home. He had steadfastly refused to let me help, but I still felt bad just going to bed while he worked, so I just stayed there, sitting and talking to him. I'm really glad that you think so, Naruto. IG replied while washing the dishes. But if you say it so much it feels like you are trying to convince me and yourself. I stammered before taking a calming breath in. I know I've been calling you brother for some time now. But all that time I just thought that it was just me. I admitted, feeling a bit ashamed. I had thought that he was just putting up with me. After all, who would like to be the brother of someone so troublesome? Kami, I sounded like Shikamaru now. Idiot. I instantly grimaced. You are my brother, Naruto. I looked over to the kitchen and saw that he had put the bowls aside and he had turned towards me too. That's a fact and it's never going to change. I blinked quickly before simply grinning so wide that I had to close my eyes. It helped a lot to keep the tears in check. Thanks, brother. I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking. It was a close thing. And, just as I was about to speak again, we heard a knock at the door. Wonder who that is? I wondered as I stood up. IG was busy, after all. Gigi. I shouted excitedly, hugging the old man that simply chuckled good-naturedly. You made it. I'm glad I could make it, yes. The man that I had grown to see as a grandfather smiled at me as I invited him in. It felt so much better to have a decent place for him to visit, contrary to what the small apartment given to me had been. Hi Ruzen, good to see you. I resisted the urge to either roll my eyes or deadpan at IG. He had some real problems addressing people informally. Even our friend's parents, who we had been seeing for a long time already. I'll get you a cup of tea. At least he seemed to be opening up a little lately. That would be appreciated, IG. You wouldn't believe the things I got, Gigi. I finally couldn't contain myself enough and started showing the old man my presents. Because, you know, I had presents. Shino and Shikamaru's presents were awesome. Just thinking about all the traps that I could turn into pranks made me want to start reading already. Which IG would take advantage of to make me read other things or, Kami forbid, study. I shuddered as my brother handed out a cup to Gigi, who was giving me his usual indulgent smile. I didn't care enough to point it out. I did see a flash of something else while I told him about my presents though. I wondered what that was. Then there was Chowji's gift that was just all kinds of awesome. I could care less about fancy places, but everyone liked them for a reason. And any place that made ramen was a place that deserved respect. Especially if it was good ramen as I had been told. And Hinata's gift. I had honestly, and embarrassingly, forgotten about that time I helped her out. And knowing that she remembered and all. I didn't even know what I felt about that. But it was nice, very nice. And then it was Iji's gift. I'll admit, he was kinda right about why I used the clothes I used, but I really liked orange. So, I was really grateful for his gift and really glad that he had still kept the orange a priority. But, the necklace. The necklace just stole the whole show. It was. I didn't even know how to describe it. But it felt like making the fact that we were brothers real. I had to blink away some tears before they while looking down at the pendant that I had been showing Gigi and quickly grin at him while closing my eyes. On that note the old man's smile widened. I brought my own present too. He and Igi chuckled at my expression. I've seen you progress a lot this year, Naruto, and I'm really glad about it. I scratched the back of my head embarrassedly. It really wasn't much. Ig had been the one to drill me in the boring theory after all. And everyone had helped my Shuriken Jutsu and Taijutsu. I blinked as Gigi brought out a book and I felt a pit of dread forming on my stomach. He didn't expect me to study more, did he? I gulped. This is part of your legacy, Naruto. Huh? I asked instantly and Ig turned with wide eyes. Well, not exactly. But it's a start. The old man quickly corrected himself. Legacy? I asked confused. From your parents? My head suddenly felt very faint. I had obviously asked Gigi about my family before. But he had always said that he didn't know. What was going on? But you said. I know what I said, Naruto. His face turned into a pained expression that, despite what was happening, I couldn't help but feel bad about. But you have to understand, that I couldn't tell you back then. Gigi looked very old at that moment, I noticed. Why? I breathed out after a moment before feeling a hand on my shoulder and turned to look into Iji's red eyes. Breath, Naruto. He said softly and I took a deep breath in. It helped a bit. I'm here. That helped a lot more, actually. I smiled weakly at him before we both turned to the Hokage. Your parents were very known in the village and outside of it. He said slowly and I nodded with a frown. They were heroes of the village, actually. I felt a small happy smile take over my face before my scowl deepened. Then why? But that means that they made enemies out of almost everyone else. He grimaced and I did the same. Yeah, that made some sense. Ig had explained to me how some of our idols weren't seen as such by other villages. Like the Shoe Dame, even if he was respected, it didn't mean that he was liked. Or how the Yondaime was the worst thing in the world for Iwa, it made a lot of sense once he explained. Can I know now? I trailed off as I felt a knot form on my throat. The pained expression coming back to Gigi's face didn't make me feel better. I'd rather not, but I will tell you, if you really want to know. He said, speaking very slowly. As I went to speak, I felt a squeeze on my shoulder and turned to Ig. He gave me a small sad smile. Maybe you should ask why he doesn't want to tell you. He asked carefully and I frowned. And then I stopped to think. Gigi had been great. He had always cared. He wasn't bad. But he said he would tell you if you wanted, remember? Right. Gigi didn't want to keep it a secret from me. At least, not completely. Right. Thank you. I whispered and his grin widened some. And I returned it to him as best I could. IG was really the best. Anytime, brother. He replied instantly and my smile grew even more. Why, Gigi? I asked simply and the old man took a deep breath in. Because you were too boisterous. I felt a stab in my chest at those words. It isn't that bad a thing, really. But I couldn't have you announcing to everyone who your parents are. I nodded slowly, it made some sense. And now? You haven't changed much. He said, and I was surprised that he did so with a fond smile. But that has focused mostly in your little group. He added that looking at both IG and me. I'm confident that you wouldn't tell anyone besides them if I told you. That was probably right. It was annoying and embarrassing to accept, but I would probably blurt it out to them eventually. So, do you want to know? He asked, not looking like he really cared about my answer. And I considered it. Knowing my parents had been one of the things I wished the most while growing up. I wanted a connection to something, someone. But, at that moment, I realized that it didn't really matter. I had my own connections now. I had Gigi, my grandfather. Tkijisen and Nichan, my uncle and cousin. And, I turned to my side to see a supporting smile, IG, my brother. Finding out about my family didn't sound that important anymore. It was important, of course. But if Gigi wanted to keep it a secret, he had to have reasons. And considering that they weren't around, they were either dead or... That was something I had to know. Did they love me? I managed to whisper nervously. Because if they had left me because they hated me like... You were the most important thing in the world for them. Gigi answered instantly and without a doubt. I felt a now familiar warm feeling inside my chest and smiled before it was quickly splashed with the cold realization that my parents were dead. I had known, but at the same time. I can wait then. I nodded even if I felt sad about having to wait. The old man's face seemed to fill itself with both pride and pain. What was this about a legacy? That had helped me decide to. Even if I didn't know them, now I knew they loved me and I would have a connection even if I didn't have names. This is a book about calligraphy and how to develop it. He explained and I frowned. It's a great first step towards fuinjutsu, which is an art that both your parents were exceptional at. I blinked. I knew that one. It was an elective for next year. Now I knew for sure one of my choices. I grinned as I took the book from him and stared at it. I'll be the best fuinjutsu user ever, believe it, Gigi. I exclaimed while grinning. I didn't even know what they could do, but if both my parents were famous and they were both great at it, then it must be cool. I was definitely learning it. I look forward to it, Naruto. And then I'll get that hat off your head, Gigi, just you wait. I added with a peace sign. I look forward to that even more. The old man's smile widened. This was definitely the best birthday ever. I was sure. Oh. All the excitement of the day had finally gotten to Naruto and he had gone to sleep. Meanwhile, I was still tidying up the place. Just as I finished, I let out a tired sigh. It had been a long day, full of cooking and then partying. So, I just wanted to go to bed and... I froze just as I set foot in the dining room. A few folders neatly laid on a side of the table. For a split second my mind went back to when Naruto forgot his homework, or I did. But that made no sense considering what had been going on during the day and that I had just tidied the place. It also reminded me of a scene from a month ago. "What are you playing at?" I couldn't help but echo my thoughts from back then. Warily, I sat at the table and opened the folders, deciding that I may as well read them. I could have left them there, but what was the worst a few folders could do? And sure enough, the content wasn't dangerous per se, but it was worrying. Inside were proposals from the civilian side of the council. One proposed lowering the taxes for shops and the other lowering the prices for escort missions for goods. It made me frown, but I reassured myself in the fact that it described enough for me to know what it was about and not enough to feel like I was reading confidential information. And as I finished the files, I looked up and saw a note in front of me, away from the other papers. "What do you think?" It read simply. I stared at it for a long moment before noticing that there was a blank sheet and something to write set on the table too. I had stopped being surprised about things appearing on the table by then. I spent a good deal of time looking over the proposals. I didn't have the foggiest about why someone, possibly but not surely Danza, wanted me to read this and give my opinion. But I owed a debt to them. I would have never known who had attacked Naruto's apartment without them, and without that, there was no guarantee that Kobyu would have been punished. And it was a very small thing, considering the things I had expected to be asked to do if my suspicions were right. Slowly, I started counting the pros and cons of each as I saw it. How the reduced taxes could affect overall economy of the village and the funding of things like the academy, while the reduced prices for missions would affect Shinobi in general, potentially reducing their progress by making them struggle to gather as much money as they otherwise would. Eventually, as I started running out of things to point out, a new file appeared. This was a proposal from the Shinobi side of the council. It detailed how they wanted to relocate more funds towards the civilian-run R&D that supplied Shinobi. There was no question asked, but I got the gist of it. The Shinobi side needed the favor of the civilian side to approve the third proposal, which meant accepting one of the other two. I looked over my pros and cons sheet. In the end, it was an easy decision. If the taxes were reduced, there would be even less money to work with. Lower mission prices would affect Shinobi, but they would, potentially, be helped by the R&D improvement. It wasn't perfect, but there was no perfect that I could see. It was simply a choice between two bad choices to push a good one forward. And as I was about to write my conclusion, I stopped and frowned. My hand extended to the side and picked up a folder. Slowly and carefully, I went over the proposal again. Turning my answer sheet around, I wrote that if I had to decide between one of the two civilian propositions to push the Shinobi one forward, I would choose neither and give up on the latter. Without actual numbers and more information, I couldn't reasonably decide to cut into someone's earnings. I had no way of knowing if it would have disastrous results on the affected party, be it Shinobi or the system. For all I knew, both could affect badly on both sides. With a tired sigh, I organized everything back in a neat pile and pushed it towards the middle of the table with the answer sheet on top of everything. A second later, it disappeared. Tiredly, I stood up and went for a glass of water. I could really use after whatever that had been. I didn't expect, however, to find something else waiting for me in the paper's place. A scroll sat innocently in the previously occupied space with a small note stuck to it. "Good job. It was a scroll about how to use Fuuma Shuriken. I grinned. Well, that wasn't too bad. And I definitely can use this. I instantly decided to save it as discreetly as possibly inside my inventory. If someone asked about the thing, I would deny having it. Just in case. But I needed to be very careful about it since I knew they had me under vigilance, strict vigilance it appeared. They had known almost everything I had been doing against Kobu after all. I'm suddenly very grateful for making friends with parents so high up. I thought to myself. At least that way nobody could just disappear me. I massaged my temples. I would never regret doing the things I did though. I put a weak smile on my face as I thumbed the necklace that rested behind my shirt. It had a pendant with a blue and red version of the yin-yang symbol. Live life to the fullest. I told myself as I went upstairs towards my room. Wow, this is easier than I thought. I hate you, Naruto. I grumbled to myself as I eyed the disaster that was my calligraphy attempts. Turns out that writing with a brush is difficult, who would have thought, right? I could barely tell what I had tried to do with half the kanji in the paper. My eyes moved towards the one in front of Naruto and suddenly I knew how the blonde must have felt when I used running at the academy. His writing was already pretty damn good and we had just started. It's just that I'm the best, believe it. He gave me a grin and a peace sign and I returned him a weary smile. I was glad that he had something he was really good at though. Who knows? Maybe all those Seal Master Naruto were right after all. Still I decided to burst his bubble quickly before it got too big. It's not perfect. You'll have to continue practicing. Sure thing. I'll have this down in a minute, just you wait, he boasted before biting his tongue and frowning at the paper while wielding the brush. With a sigh, I followed his example for a minute before a screen finally appeared. New skill acquired, Calligraphy LVL1. Calligraphy LVL1. Improves the user's writing by 5%. Well, something to replace cartography for when I don't feel like training physically. I guess I'm used to myself before suppressing a groan as yet another unintelligible character appeared on the sheet. My maps were already pretty good after all, even if the level of the skill wasn't that good. Which is more, I had started a project after charting most of the village. I freed a whole wall in my room and started making a mural-like drawing of the entire village on it, even if it wasn't as detailed as the maps I had already for separated parts. Soon enough I would have to start making exceedingly elaborate maps or even start again to level the skill. I was leaning towards leaving the skill as it was. The drawings were good enough for me as they were and it would probably level better when working on new things once I started mapping the outside of the village. Entirely new maps would help level up the skill faster. That was my theory, at least. As it was, the skill wasn't bad at all, in my opinion. Cartography LVL14. Improves the quality of maps drawn by 70%. Not bad at all. I'm used before focusing once more on the papers. Something in the back of my mind was telling me that studying Fuinjutsu would be a right headache for me. It wasn't for nothing that Seal Masters were rare, after all. Oh. 1 month later. You are progressing very well, Iruka-sensei said after what felt like hours of me sitting with a leaf on my face. Basic chakra control exercises has gone up a level. Chakra control has gone up a level. That's a long-ass name, I thought to myself after reading the skill name, not for the first time. I relaxed my control on the chakra and opened my eyes. Basic chakra control exercises LVL5. Increases the chakra control of the user according to level. Chakra control, E+. The chakra control level would be a lot cooler if I knew what it actually does. I fought a grimace while looking at the new stat progress. Chakra control as a stat was a complete mystery to me as of that moment. Regarding the system side of it, at the very least. Thanks, Iruka-sensei, I replied respectfully. I took a second to breathe in deeply and relax my muscles. I think we can take the next step and have you start doing the exercise with your eyes open, the scarred teacher commented with a thoughtful frown. Just don't focus too much in actually seeing at the start. We can work that up as you progress. Of course, sensei, I nodded while picking up the leaf again. Oh. Arag, I hate you, Shika. I all but whined as I leaned back on my hands and looked over my latest defeat. You are getting very good at this, IG Kauza commented from where the adults sat watching us play and chatting between themselves. Thanks, Kauza. I try, I replied tiredly. Eventually, I had to give up and started calling them by their first names, even if it still felt awkward to do so. It felt even more disrespectful to continue denying them their rather adamant requests, after all. Maybe I should take Shikamaru's place? Shikaku asked with a smirk making me groan. Everyone chuckled good-naturedly. I shrugged resignedly. A loss is a loss, might as well add some new things to this, I commented, and I swear the Narrowhead's eyes shone. Suddenly, I remembered the few times I had played against him. No wonder I kept losing. I was an idiot. Remember that you brought this to yourself, IG Shikamaru said from the side with much the same smirk that his father was wearing. I sighed and started playing. Naruto is rubbing off on me. I dutifully ignored the oi in the background. Soon enough, I was reading a new screen before making it disappear with a thought. Shogi has gone up a level. Someday, I'm going to win a match. Someday. I told myself as I moved another piece. Then Shikaku made his own move and I grimaced as I saw my impending doom. Not soon though. Shogi LVL 24. Increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi according to skill level. Oh. For Kami's sake, I exclaimed exasperated. Will you shut up for a second? I mean, I was just wondering. Fine. I gave up throwing my arms up. You can come with us tomorrow, I glared as the girl beamed at me, clearly pleased with herself. But we train, and that's it. You'll only annoy Sasuke if you try to do anything else. He really doesn't like to do small talk. I can do that, she blinked as my face turned to disbelief. I can. She added with more heat and a frown. I just continued staring at her. I mean, she always complained or at least whined when we had to do the academy training. Who would blame me for not believing her? Why are you looking at me like that? She hissed. Well, I started slowly. Besides you never wanting to train? I asked with a raised eyebrow. Her frown intensified. I mean, come on, You think we don't hear you during classes? The last thing you want to do is train, and at that, she pouted. Fine, I'll shut up. But if you annoy Sasuke, I'm never inviting you again. He is a great Taijutsu partner. I like to have him around. She simply hummed and walked happily back to the desk. I sighed. The girl really was stubborn. She had been annoying me non-stop ever since the Uchiha had started training with us. And considering that I couldn't avoid her since I worked at her family's shop, I had decided that it was a lost battle to continue denying her. Oh. 1 month later. Intermediate Taijutsu has gone up a level. This was a good idea, I must, with a small grin as I avoided a rather powerful punch from Chaoji with a sidestep. Instead of sending a punch of my own as a counter, I had to jump over a low kick from Shikamaru. I had noticed that my taijutsu progress had stalled after the mid-year exams. That made a lot of sense considering that no one besides Sasuke was a proper challenge to me when it came down to only hand-to-hand combat. As such, I had decided to try and fight them 2 against 1. As I was seeing right then, it was working very well. A punch of Chaoji's eventually found its way to my gut and knocked the wind out of me before Shikamaru's fist connected with the side of my face. A kick, which I didn't know who sent, hit my side and I ended up on the floor. I groaned as I tapped the floor to sign that I gave up. It was great training, but it really upped the difficulty. Regretting the decision? Shika asked with a bored tone, and I turned to see him crouching down next to me and resting his cheek on his hand lazily. No, but I can't deny that it hurts. He rolled his eyes at me and muttered something that was probably a grumble about my training habits. I ignored him and slowly pushed myself up before taking Chaoji's hand and thanking him. Well, if you are happy then we'll continue kicking your ass, the Akimichi chuckled, and I smiled, taking it as a victory that he didn't apologize or look guilty for the violence involved. He had come a long way from the soft guy he was when we first met. I feel the love, Gu. We can totally improve your look, Hinata. I turned to see Ino eyeing Hinata up and down, probably going over outfit options on her head. Meanwhile, the shy girl was poking her fingers together and looking everywhere but the Yamanaka. The boys would fall over themselves once I'm done with you, I promise. Why you think so? Nobody missed the way her eyes moved towards a certain blonde boy that was in a shurikenjutsu competition with Sasuke. Ino smirked. Quite. I'm sure that was as far as she got before the Hyuga girl put a hand over her mouth. I am sure we can go shopping together sometime, Ino-san. Great, the blonde girl beamed at her and I smiled at the scene. I was glad that we had another girl for Hinata to interact with. Naruto. Would you mind coming with us? We might need a boy's opinion. I suppressed a laugh as I saw Hinata's face go as red as it possible could. I failed to do so though, when I saw Naruto turn with a baffled expression and a heart. I don't know if she'll be good for Hinata or not, Shikamaru commented with a smirk while standing next to me. We'll just have to see, I replied, mimicking his expression as we looked at the two blondes talking. Ino seemed to be doing a pretty good job at convincing the confused boy. I was just glad that the girl was acting friendly with Naruto. Maybe the wardrobe change had helped with that. So I turned to look at Shino on my other side. Is it my turn to spar? Sure thing, I nodded. Shika, Chaoji, have a go at Shino, will you? I'll go look for some drinks. I meant. Come on, Shino. A cheerful Chaoji interrupted the Aburam before could finish his sentence and pulled him into the sparring circle. I simply hummed innocently to myself, carefully keeping my eyes away from the totally not panicking Shino. Oh. I swear to Kami, guys, I grumbled while sitting on the floor and trying to keep a stern expression. Emphasis on trying. I come here at least once a week. The least you could do is stop tackling me. My only response was a tongue to the face and I sighed as my expression turned to a fond one and I started petting the dogs around me. Just give up, Hannah said from the side where she sat behind a counter and leaned on a hand. They love you, and that's it. More like they love the food, I countered with a grin, making her shake her head. A bark made me turn to Yuki, who was looking at me with a scolding expression. Strange thing considering that she was a dog. Or, I love you too, Yuki. She barked again, this time happily. The other dogs, apparently, weren't ones to be shown up. I had to spend several hours playing, petting and booping dogs and puppies. I wasn't complaining. Oh. I wasn't that bad, was I? I turned my head and stared intently towards the classroom board. I felt cold sweat run down my neck and saw everyone else in our group pointedly avoiding Ino's eyes. Oh Cammy, I was. She realized with horror. There were a few silent snickers, and not so silent ones in Naruto's case. What was the subject of the conversation? The pink-haired banshee that was currently all over our resident Eiji Uchiha. It seemed that the Yamanaka heiress had finally realized just how annoying her previous attitude had been. You don't have any ground to stand on, Naruto, she countered, probably trying to save some face. You were worse than Kiba. Hey! The Jinchuriki protested immediately. Take that back. That's not true. Right, guys. This time I looked to the side since the blonde boy was sitting right in front of me. Right. Brother? He asked, pleaded, more like, me. Oh Cammy, I was. My whiskered friend slumped in his seat, the same defeated tone coloring his voice. Look at the bright side, guys, I said, mustering the will to face both blondes. You got better, I tried, forcing a smile on my face. I wasn't very successful, apparently, since both smacked their foreheads against their desks. A valiant attempt Shino offered me. Even if it was useless. At least I tried. I shot at the bug lover who turned his face away from me. Finally Sasuke said, looking at the ceiling when Iruka-sensei walked inside the classroom and forced Sakura to take a seat away from us since the close ones were already occupied. Thank Kami, the Uchiha heir muttered low enough that only our group heard. Oh. 1 month later. Basic chakra control exercises has gone up a level. Chakra control has gone up a level. I almost cheered out loud at that, and a proud tear almost escaped the corner of my eye. You've been doing remarkable progress, Ig, Iruka-sensei complimented. You don't say, I almost said. And, being completely honest, I thought that was justified. I had never been able to maintain the speed of skill leveling before. But I had this time. It had taken 1 month to level basic chakra control exercises, still thought it was a stupidly long name, by the way, 5 times, and it had taken another month to get another 5 levels. Granted, the last month I had been training on my own too, while the first I had been only doing so under supervision, but still. Chakra control, D. I think I can safely say that you can train this on your own during the holidays. I almost felt bad as our teacher said that, since I had already been doing exactly that. So, with that out of the way, he continued. This concludes our last chakra control class for the year. Good luck on the end of the year exams next week, Ig. I expect good results from you. I'll have the best results, again. Just you wait, I replied confidently. Thanks for taking the time to teach me this, Iruka-sensei, I added with a bow. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, he replied, a fond smile on his scarred face. See you tomorrow, sensei, I said, returning the grin as I walked out the classroom. Oh. Naruto groaned as he rested his head on his desk. My head still hurts. I thought it would get better the second time, you know. I simply shook my head at him like some of the others. Ino rolled her eyes at her fellow blonde. We had just finished the last part of the end of the year exams. It had gone surprisingly similar to the mid-year ones, actually. Granted, there was more theory to study, but everything else remained the same except that Iruka expected us to do much better. The only change was how good we were at it and me getting better results in the theory test than Sakura. Aside from that, everything else stayed the same. Well, we can forget about ever getting first place, Naruto grumbled good-naturedly. Not like I cared anyway, Shikamaru replied with a lazy wave of his hand. Come on, guys, he can't take first place forever. We'll do better next year. Ino tried, she truly did. Her only response were incredulous stares, even from Sasuke. I was kinda embarrassed by the unanimous support. It was true that I was very ahead of the rest of them, but still. Ino is right. Now everyone turned to Naruto. Sasuke can't take first place forever, guys. We'll take it from him next year. Everyone blinked in confusion. Naruto-kun. Hinata started shyly, which honestly surprised me since she didn't stutter with his name. IG was the one to take first place. Nah, he doesn't count, the blonde boy countered, and everyone blinked again. True, Shikamaru nodded and I turned to him wide-eyed. Makes sense. Shino pushed his shades up. Guys. I started before Sasuke nodded too with a grunt and my jaw fell. What the hell? Not what I meant, Ino said weakly. But good enough, she shrugged. Now let's go, I can't wait to eat Ige's celebratory dinner, she continued, and the not-so-stoic ones in the group cheered. What? I blinked before growing concerned. Weren't we going to a restaurant? I asked as cold sweat that had nothing to do with the tests we had gone through run down my back. Guys, I really don't want to cook right now. I choked when Naruto and Ino turned the puppy dog eyes full power against me. When I looked around for support, the only thing I saw was a sad Hinata, which made me feel even worse. I sighed. Fine. Yater. Naruto jumped as Ino pumped a fist in victory. I just want you to know that I hate you, guys. I love you too, brother. Now, let's go. And with that, both blondes started dragging me towards our house. Quest complete, finish the end of the year exams in first place. Reward. +1 to all stats. +1 to all skills. At least I have this, I grinned to myself. It was especially nice since there were several skills that had become a pain to level or I hadn't been able to level at all, like the Shuriken Jutsu skills that now needed moving targets. And the best part is that we have 2 months without classes. I chuckled at Naruto's exclamation. It seemed that it hadn't fully registered until now. It would be nice to be able to have some more free time. Having a job and training so much required a lot of time, and that wasn't even including school. Now I would have more time to visit the dogs, to train, yeah, that. Oh. 1 month later. I can't believe it, Kausa breathed out. Is this real? Ino asked her parents, who stared silently at the impossibility. Would you look at that, dear? Yoshino pointed out with an amused expression. Ig, you have my eternal respect, Shino said, completely serious. Me, for my part, could only look at the shogi board in disbelief. It's a draw, Shikamaru said, looking at the pieces with the widest smirk I had ever seen on his face. Good game. He extended a hand for me to shake, which I did, although my eyes never left the board. A draw, I muttered, voice and expression completely neutral. I didn't lose. A grin started to spread on my features before I snorted. I didn't lose. My words came out louder this time and I started chuckling. It soon developed into uncontrolled laughter. I can't believe it. Ino started shaking her head, completely in shock. Ig is the best. Naruto easily joined my celebration even if he hadn't gotten what happened until Shika had said it. Well, I'll be Chouji chuckled before elbowing his Nara friend. It finally happened, huh? Indeed, the lazy bastard agreed easily, still smirking. Let's go again, I all but demanded. Even if I started another almost infinite losing streak, this one draw meant everything. There was a chance for me, and that's what I had wanted confirmation for all that time. Shogi's level will reach high enough eventually, just you wait, Shikamaru, I thought to myself dramatically. Shogi has gone up a level. Shogi LVL 30. Increases your strategic thinking while playing Shogi according to skill level. Eventually. Oh. Did you have fun? Hannah asked as I walked into her place. A second later, a bunch of dogs walked after me while I held the door open. Yeah, it was nice, I replied as the dogs gave their own enthusiastic responses. You took longer than I thought, the Inuzuka pointed out with a smirk that told me she knew exactly why. I returned her a sad smile. Truth was, I had felt bad for them. They didn't get out nearly enough, which was the whole reason why I offered to take them for a walk. Hannah needed to stay to take care of those that needed her presence almost constantly. There were also D-rank missions to take them for a walk, but, apparently, Jenin preferred to take other tasks. It was easier to do some chore at someone's house than have to put up with an annoying mutt. I almost growled as I recalled that. Once I make Jenin, half my missions will be to do this, I swore to myself. I just hope they won't be too heartbroken when classes start again, I told the girl behind the counter as we both watched the dogs I had taken out talk /bark to the ones that had had to stay. It's better than nothing, she replied, not reassuring me at all, although that was probably not her intention anyway. I have a feeling you'll start again after you graduate anyway, she smiled my way, gesture that I easily returned. Yeah, they are awesome, I shrugged. And I'll be getting paid for doing what I want. Just hope I'll be able to convince my team of these guys' adorableness. I'm sure you'll manage. And if I don't, then I'll just have to threaten them, I said, and she giggled. Little did she know that I was serious. Sometimes I wonder if you are an Inuzuka and you've been hiding that from us, she shook her head, still giggling. I wish. Oh. 1 month later. Skill maxed, basic chakra control exercises. Chakra control has gone up a level. Chakra control, D. Cool, I thought with a wide grin. Can't say I saw the skill maxing at level 15, but cool nonetheless. Didn't unlock the intermediate though, sadly. Still, I was quite happy with that as it was. In a week it would be a year since I arrived to this world and I was very satisfied with my progress so far. It was slower than I would have thought considering that I had a gamer system, but it was still good. I closed my eyes and stretched my arms over my head, letting out a content sigh. As I opened my eyes, I sighed again for a completely different reason. In front of me, on the table, sat a light brown folder. What have you got for me this time? I wondered as I opened it and started to read. My assignments had started to arrive once a month, although exactly when was never predictable. I had taken to them easily though, and they had rapidly become part of my routine. They never had anything too concerning, or at all, and I always got a discount or coupon of some kind for a shop that was always nice to have. I was already stacking on supplies for when Naruto and I started actually practicing Fuinjutsu. We had to promise the Hokage not to start until he gave the okay, but apparently he trusted me enough to let me buy what we would need in advance. I wasn't about to go behind his back with that. Practicing chakra control was one thing, practicing something as serious and obscure as the art of seals was entirely different, after all. Ha! I finished a second reading of the papers with an amused expression. A good proposition made by the civilian side. Had to happen eventually, I guess. Soon enough, I found myself setting the folder down after adding a paper giving my opinion about it with a surprisingly low amount of changes. Running a hand through my dark hair tiredly, I decided that it was late enough and I had to go to bed. "Good job," said a now familiar note on the table after a second. I let out a wan smile as I picked it up, ripped it to pieces and threw it on the trash bin. No need to keep any proof of whoever it was that was giving me extra homework. I had yet another surprise waiting for me though. Where there would usually be a simple coupon or something for a ninja shop, now sat a group of scrolls. Suddenly fully awake once more, I read through the titles and realized that they were introductory texts to a bunch of things. Most of them covered in detail on the electives we would take once classes started once more. Well, thank you for the extra study material, I guess I thought to myself as I carried everything to my room. They could be easily explained as me having bought them since they weren't something out of reach for an academy student. They were simply too expensive if one wasn't going to take the electives, not even mentioning that no one bought books or scrolls since the school provided all the necessary materials. Oh. Skill maxed, physical conditioning. New perk acquired, poised. Poised. When activating an EP-based skill at full energy points, the user can use EP skills without cost for 10 seconds. Usable once a day. Thrice I whistled as I read the screens at the end of my workout. Now, if only I could get this, but with meditation, I grumbled internally. Why was I complaining? Well, said skill had been sitting at level 19 for much longer than physical conditioning. I had come up with the theory that I needed to fulfill some kind of requirement for the last level. Either that or it was stupidly difficult to max for some reason. I was inclined towards the first option though. It'll happen when it happens, I shrugged tiredly as I made my way inside. I stopped and raised an annoyed eyebrow as I walked inside and saw that table covered in my brother's calligraphy practice. Naruto. I started shouting before my voice lost all the strength in it. I knew the blonde was asleep already, and waking him up would be more troublesome than anything else. With a sigh, I gathered all the papers, ink and brushes and started putting it away. The guy is scarily good. His fuinjutsu teacher will be shocked, I thought with no small amount of pride. For my part. Calligraphy LVL 15. Improves the user's writing by 75%. It was good progress, considering how hard it was for me to get the kanjis right. However, I would need it at 100% if I wanted to start with actual fuinjutsu. That meant at least a few more months of practice. That alone had discouraged me from picking the seal art as one of my electives. If I had to waste a few months just to start with it, it would be a waste. I could pick that one up at a later date and self-study it. Probably after graduating. It had a lot of potential, but required a lot of time. Time that I didn't have, even if it looked like I did. 1 year was a lot less than it seemed. Hence why I had decided for medical training and ninjutsu. The latter was an obvious one, since battle prowess was the most important thing in this world. Without any of the major villains' existences hanging over my head, I may have chosen something less fight-oriented. Hell, I might not even have bothered with being a ninja at all. But I needed the power to protect my life and the lives of everyone I cared about. Medical training was added for that last reason too. Tsunade was a scary character, even if she didn't do that much in the end. If I could develop or learn a regenerative jutsu for myself, I could take for myself one of the reasons why Jinchuriki were so dangerous, their inability to stay down. And that wasn't even mentioning creating my own strength, or dexterity, or constitution enhancement jutsu just like Tsunade's. And thus, medical training triumphed over Bukajutsu and Genjutsu, the other two offensive classes. If there had been a Taijutsu class, it may have contended too, but since it was included in the regular curriculum, I didn't have to choose. Talking about that. Intermediate Taijutsu, active, LVL 12. Increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. Active effect increases the user's physical stats by 6. Active effect consumption 40 energy points per second. What a beauty, I thought to myself with a smirk as I made my way to my room after a shower. That skill alone had guaranteed that I would never lose a Taijutsu spar in class, not that I needed to use it often. I would usually just use it for a second at a time in particularly hard matchups like Sajuke or Kiba, since it appeared that the Inuzuka had started training with his family at last. That wasn't even mentioning when I coupled it with running and free running for extra speed. Free running, active, LVL 12. When used increases the speed of the user while running by 60%. When used increases the distance the users jump by 60%. When used increases the power of the user's arms while maneuvering by 60%. Consumption 14 energy points per second. Which took me to one of my favorites hobbies, /training exercises. Traveling through the village at full speed without ever touching the ground was one of the best activities I had ever taken part in, right next to spending time with the dogs, believe it or not. It was especially funny when I tried to do so while using stealth, be it through the active skill or not, and scared the shit out of a civilian or two. Granted, it may not have helped with my already dropping reputation, but it was still fun. Maybe I had been spending too much time with Naruto. Stealth, active, LVL 23. Hides your presence according to the level of the skill and the awareness level of others. Consumption 5 energy points per second. Yeah, I had gotten entirely too much practice with the skill. To the point that some Chunin now had trouble keeping track of me. I had finally reached Shino levels of stealth, apparently. As I entered my room, I looked at the wall opposite to my bed. Covering the entire wall was a beautiful drawing /map of Konoha. It had taken some time, but I had finally finished. It was more art than map, but I still loved that shit. It was the culmination of something that had started as a useless skill that I got when I drew the location of a few shops. It could be useful for some recon missions and whatnot, but, honestly, that had nothing to do with why I had continued with that. It was a nice hobby to have, really. It had been a surprise though, when the skill changed from cartography to drawing. Drawing LVL 15. Improves the quality of drawn goods by 75%. However, I preferred it like that since that meant that I could use the skill for much more than just maps. I could now draw landscapes, people or anything else that stroke my fancy. Overall, it's been a very good year. IG Sata. Title, Aspiring Prodigy. Energy points, 460/460. Chakra points, 230/230. Strength, 23. Dexterity, 25. Constitution, 23. Chakra, 23. Chakra control, D. Very nice indeed. That's it, guy, for now. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.